Deus, o salutaris nostre, Dominex Deus, Ilinex Deus, Ilinex Deus, Deus noster, Dominex Noster, Angeli, Arcangeli, Ave Pateri, Laudam Deum, Domino Maestatis,
Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today is Saturday, May 18th, and tomorrow's Pentecost, right? Right, Astro? Tomorrow's Pentecost. So it's the
I don't know,
vigil
man.
of the
Think so.
Feast of Pentecost. Oh yeah, I forgot you're in monkey country, so you know stuff. Okay, anyways, glad to have you guys as always. Glad to have you guys as always. And I don't know what else to say.
And
Because today, what are we talking about today, Astro?
We're here as Calvinist apologists to defend double predestination.
Yes, we will be defending Calvinism, mashallah. Mashallah, we will be defending Calvinism. What's like the very deterministic Islamic school? Can't remember.
Oh, they're it was a Sunni school. They basically believe that everything was determined by God and like free will had no meaning at all. But they were condemned, so.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that everybody thinks that all Muslims are like that.
No, they're not like. Actually, like a lot of Muslim views are Pelagian, semi-Pelagian.
Blue pilled.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the like there are Muslims out there who call Christianity like Calvinistic and deterministic. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's been some stuff going on this week. I've been cooking a bit. So this week I decided to release 2 videos. Share my screen real quick just so you guys can see. So I have all of these pop-ups. Okay, so one of them is this one about the phrase double predestination, because apparently, as I explained, in the 20th century, there was a man by the name of Karl Barth. You ever heard of Karl Barth, Astro? He's like really cringe.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Karl Barth, he was a Swiss theologian. He was a Protestant. And he had a very particular notion of double predestination. Basically, Rahner and von Balthasar, they kind of respond to Barth and use this phrase double predestination as like an antithesis of what Catholicism teaches when it comes to predestination. And through the workings of providence, Catholic Answers kind of picks this up and popularizes it as, okay, double predestination, that is this evil Calvinist view of God creating people damned, blah, blah, blah. Double predestination is the word for this. But when you look into the actual history of things, double predestination was a term used by the Church Fathers. It was a term used by medieval theologians. It never was an objectionable term. So very important to remember that double predestination isn't some sort of, catch-all term to describe, this evil sort of Calvinism. It just isn't. So what we have to do is, we have to reclaim the phrase. And honestly, I don't know why we would even give it up in the first place. Because if you're talking to anybody about predestination, you should be very clear about what you mean, about the relationship between the various different decrees and merit and demerit. Be very clear about all that stuff. So when you explain it, it shouldn't be objectionable at all. But important, you need to explain it. So really, any sort of basically where everything started. This is great. I love it when you kind of like push the envelope like this. When everything started, everyone said, oh, reprobation is heresy. They were like, oh, maybe like and then like after a while, they're like, oh, okay, maybe this is this type of reprobation, because this talks about it and that talks about it, this council talks about it, blah blah blah, and then it's gotten to the time it's like, okay, I concede everything you're saying, but the double predestination is a mean word. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Come on, guys, go all the way, go all the way. Just go all the way. Use the phraseology and the terminology of the Augustinians. Come on, just use it. It's unobjectionable, and it's not at all liable to misunderstanding if, just like you would do with something like the incarnation, just like you would do with something like the Trinity, just like you would do with something like transubstantiation or even single predestination. Just explain the freaking term, guys. It's not that this is honestly, I was just so tired of, I'm just take down that. Yeah, you guys know to watch it. I was so tired of watching all of these comments. Oh, Astro left, game over. So tired of watching all of these comments, all of these replies, all of these reactions, to these videos, and everybody's basically like, oh, but that's a mean word, or sending the same catechism passage over and over again about predestination to hell. It's like, do you know the particular sense in which predestination to hell is used and how it's been interpreted and how it's utilized by the magisterium? No, you don't. Of course you don't. It's just an entire ridiculous conversation. Really, just like you would with literally any other term in theology, just use it and explain what you mean, because intrinsically it's the proper term to use. Okay. Anyways, yeah, that's just kind of all of the stuff going around that video. But what I wanted to do today is I actually wanted to go into a little bit more detail when it comes to predestination, kind of start from the beginning, explain a lot of stuff, and hopefully it'll make a lot more sense to you. There was something else. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain. Eventually, I'm going to do a video on the various different theological schools. Eventually, I'm going to do a video on kind of more cogent, fluid presentation of what the view that I think is correct, the Thomistic view. Obviously, the Thomistic view is correct. Eventually, I'm going to do all that stuff, but this one I just kind of wanted to, have a live presentation, let you guys ask questions, blah blah. I will, I probably won't be answering like every single question or anything. Obviously, I'll be answering super chats. But before we continue, remember. Let me see. Remember, right? Yeah, bam, the ticker. The ticker. You guys remember the ticker when people used to use tickers? I don't think anybody uses that anymore.
How did he do that?
I just clicked a little button in my thing. Let me see. I can also have this one.
That's cool. So true. We can't tell him I'm real.
So true. So yeah. If you wanna help me do more stuff like this, if you enjoy videos, definitely become a patron. I do a patron video every week. This week I talked about some things about Banya's sufficient grace, blah 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 blah. Why people need to stop complaining about Banyazian sufficient grace and a bunch of stuff like that. And yeah, I talked about that this week. I mean, I have interesting videos every week. I'll say so. Become a patron. Minimum. Blah blah blah. You guys already know about all that. I don't need to tell you guys more about that. Okay, so anyways, let's actually get into it. Pulling up a Google Doc. The Jeds. Oh yeah. Let me. I forgot to remind you guys about something. So on top of all this that I talked about, let me see. Top of all of this, okay, let me go to my profile, Twitter. Forgot to mention this. Yeah, there's me. There's me. Okay. Yeah, right here, right here. So make sure you go on my page and share this tweet. Let Catholic Answers know what's up. Because this right here, they have the, I already ratioed them, but we need to make it a little bit more brutal. Okay. Right here, this article by Jimmy Akin, I at first I didn't read it too closely. So I was like, okay, I guess, it's not terrible. It's just kind of like unclear. But then, to my complete and utter surprise, let's see. Let's open it up real quick. Okay, what is Predestination by Jimmy Akin? Ironic timing, by the way. Ironic timing. But let's go here. So he starts out.
Wait, I'll be back.
Scenes. Okay. But look right here. Okay. There are certain points which are firm. Yeah, of course, we all agree God predestines no one to hell for this. A willful turning away from God, a mortal sin, is necessary, and persistence in it until the end. True. And then look at this. Look at this right here. Wow. It also rejects the idea of unconditional election, stating that when God establishes his eternal plan of predestination, he includes in each person's free response to his grace. So what Jimmy Akin is doing in this article, to be clear with you guys, what Jimmy Akin is doing in this article is he is stating that the Scotus are condemned by the church, the Thomists are condemned by the church, the Ligurians are condemned by the church, the like Suarezians are condemned by the church. So what are called the congruous, which include Bellarmine's view as well, is condemned by the church. And even this is the fun part. Even Molina would be condemned by the church, because Molina thinks that the election to the first grace is before the consideration of merit, since grace is the principal merit, and the totality of the decree of predestination itself is unconditional as well. He only thinks that the predestination to glory is conditional. So what Jimmy Akin is saying in his brilliance is that basically every single doctor of the church is condemned by the catechism. I can't think of a single doctor of the church that would reject unconditional election. Can you guys think of one? I can't think of a single one. St. Bonaventure rejected it. St. Thomas rejected it. St. Robert Bellarmine rejected it. St. Alphonsus Liguori rejected it. So it's like, okay, every single doctor of the church is just wrong about this. And every single theological school. And probably like 98% of our popes as well. Actually, 100% of our popes. Who am I kidding? Crazy. So just complete terminological imprecision, not properly explained at all. Because really, unconditional election doesn't mean that, God does not include the free choice of each human being in his plan of predestination. Because what is predestination? Just kind of like basic from the beginning. What is predestination? Predestination, according to St. Augustine, and this is the one that all of the medievals and then the Baroques are going to pull up, is that predestination is the foreknowledge and preparation of the gifts of God. The foreknowledge and preparation of the gifts of God. So basically what it is it's God knowing his own gifts and God preparing his own gifts. That's what it is. So unless you believe that there's no such thing as free will, then you're obviously going to say that the foreknowledge and preparation of God's gifts includes the free response of individuals. So it's just a complete misunderstanding of the whole problem to begin with. Complete misunderstanding. It's just completely ridiculous. And of course, before you start, making polemical works against, Reformed individuals or trying to teach Catholics about their view of predestination, you should have these things figured out already. You should have these things figured out. You should be using extremely precise terminology. You shouldn't be throwing out general platitudes, especially with an issue like predestination. You have to be precise. You notice every time that I talk about predestination, very precise, very scientific, very technical, because that's how you have to be. So you have to be. You can't just throw out, things like what Jimmy Akin did in this article. It's horrific. But anyways, I'm gonna start from the start right here. And just to be clear, I particularly follow the teaching of Francisco Marin Sola on predestination, which I think is the proper reading of St. Thomas and his commentators, although that is not the only one. And if I had Astro here, I would have him explain more in detail at each point what the non-Solan response is. But doesn't really matter that much. Okay. Let me share my screen. See, that's why do you need gosh, why does this always I have a bunch of pop-ups that happen all the time. It's ridiculous. But why need Catholic answers when you have scholastic answers? Right, Astro?
Yeah. Catholic answer sucks. I'm sorry.
Okay. Let me bring some nuance and charity to this. Catholic answers. I said that. I hate Catholic answers. That might be a little bit too much. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have been blessed by the ministry of Catholic answers, but I mean, their ministry to Reformed Christians in many ways has been extremely unfair. And I think in the same way that, Hasan or even you, Astro, will not really defend Islam, but stop Christian apologists from making stupid arguments against Islam. In the same way, I feel a particular desire not to have ridiculous arguments against Reformed Christianity or Reformed theology. It's equivocating on the term Christianity there. Okay, so I've heard Sola does disagree with Lagrange on some things. At least Lagrange thought that he disagreed with Sola on some things. I think that's the more important distinction, right, Astro?
Yeah. Also, they don't disagree on like predestination reprobation being free of merits demerits. So.
Yeah. Oh, Catholic Answers is live right now. Call in. How do I call in?
Oh. They have phone number. Can you call them?
Can I call them?
Yeah, you can. They have phone
my
number.
Phone they have phone. No way they're live right now. It's like what? They're in California. Dude, it's like 5 a.m.
This is the perfect proof of divine providence.
Okay, let me look up Catholic Answers live. Oh yeah. Also, I might make this a call-in show at the end if you guys wanted to hop in and ask questions to get Astro to debunk you. Okay, watch. Okay, Catholic Answers live. Okay. Let me see. I don't see it. Okay, who is on right now? It's the 18th. So nobody's on today. Yeah, this is
what
fake.
if it's Michael Lofton?
What if it's Michael Lofton? No, May 18th. May 18th does not have anybody on.
Sad.
So yeah. Yep. I will show proof right here. Okay, let's go. 18th or 17th. There's 20th. There's no 18th. Game over.
RIP.
I know. I was actually considering calling in. Actually considering.
That'd be so cool.
I know. Rating Catholic answers.
Yeah. You should join in. Read a passage from St. Thomas's Summa and say, "This is from Calvin. Is it heretical?"
Yeah, so true. Actually, read something from like the Council of Orange and say, "This is from Calvin. Is it heretical?"
Yes, so true.
Yeah, that's almost like when the Jansenists would read passages from St. Augustine and people would say, "Oh, this is heretical. This is Calvinism."
Yeah,
and the Jansenists would be like, "Actually, this is St. Augustine," and then the Jesuits would be like, "Oh, you destroyed me."
Yeah. By the way, I asked Jack to send that PDF. Did you get it? It's on Discord.
Oh yeah, I saw that Jack DM'd me.
Yeah. That's the PDF.
Okay, I'm gonna send a heart back. Okay, what is Hasan messaging? Hasan said, "Want me to join?" Oh, Hasan W. Yo, this is about to be okay. Okay, this is we're about to do some stuff about predestination. Okay, Hasan is joining as well.
Bro's
Okay, the
about
way
to cook.
yeah, I wanted to distinguish it on the basis of the antecedent will and the basis of the consequent will.
I was just distinguishing.
Yeah, I'm already distinguishing. No, because I
Yeah.
literally think that a lot of the issue, this especially comes down with what's his name, Father Most. Especially comes with Father
Oh
Most
yeah.
is they um misinterpret. Well, they confuse antecedent will and consequent will with an antecedent reprobation and
Yeah.
consequent reprobation. You ever notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'll as I go through
Not that, but just a
I'll
percent.
explain. Yeah, I'll explain the equivocation. This is why a lot of people thought that I was misreading Marine Sola, actually,
Mm-hmm.
because Marine
A
Sola
lot of
says
people. Interesting.
a lot. Well, like one person. I
Yeah.
don't know why I said a lot of people, like 1.5 people. Okay,
Yeah.
but
1.5. Yeah.
yeah, 1.5 people.
Uh
Okay,
oh. Uh oh.
so the predestination rabbit hole is almost as deep as the Palamite one. No, because we actually know what we believe. Suarism never,
Do you
Banyanism
think we're gonna
forever.
get to address? Do you think we're gonna get to address the accusation of Eastern Fathers being Molinists?
Maybe, but it wouldn't matter because they still condemn Catholic answers.
Yeah, because I saw an Eastern Orthodox saying that Saint John Damascene was a Molinist.
So he's admitting that St. John Damascene believed in a Catholic position.
Real. Yeah, they still think
You
that
just have to
Molinists believe.
you just have to be a king and reformulate every problem as a solution. Like, St. John of Damascus was a Molinist. Like, St. John of
Yeah.
Damascus was a Catholic because
Yeah.
Melina was a
Yeah.
Catholic. I mean, Melina
Yeah.
professed obedience to the Roman Pontiff. So St. John of
Yeah.
Damascus, base St. John of Damascus, I guess.
Although I would distinguish that proposition, but go on.
Yeah, funny. Okay, I was pre-moved to donate to Scholastic Answers. All of
So
you
true.
better be physically pre-moved.
Yeah.
All of you better be physically pre-moved to send those super chats. You know, Hassan's about to be
Yeah.
so triggered. He's so triggered because I'm. Oh, how's it going, Hasan?
Oh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Astro. Hello, Christian.
Alaikum salam.
Hello. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hasan.
Nice. Okay.
Mashallah.
I really enjoyed
Mashallah.
I really enjoyed over the last few days the predestination videos have been, and justification stuff because of that, have been getting passed around a lot more. And like lots of people who had no idea about it are, because of all the magisterial stuff that you've presented, they've been way more willing to change their views. So there's
Let's go.
There's a lot of people
Let's
who are
go.
realizing that the popular consciousness about this has been wrong. So I'm really happy about that.
Thank you. It's honestly, I love when that happens because a lot of people actually, because I complained about the people in my comments who were like acting like fools, and spurging out in my comments. But there were actually a lot of people who were like, yeah, before I kind of didn't really, have an idea about this. I thought, or like better yet, a lot of people were actually commenting like, hey, I actually like, I had some prejudices against Reformed theology, and this clarified some points concerning like what Calvinists actually believe, which is very helpful when it comes to the type of damage that the average sort of catechumenal online can do to the sort of viewpoint of the average Reformed individual of the Catholic Church. Because if we stop getting random catechumens saying stupid things about Reformed theology to all of these Reformed individuals, then they're much more disposed to church. Because have you noticed a sort of shift in the narrative amongst a lot of Reformed types to where they went from like debunking Catholicism to debunking pop apologetics? You ever notice that shift happened?
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's because we got a lot of people to stop saying dumb things, and it's really really amazing. So this is exactly why we use terms like double predestination, by the way. It's exactly why.
The issue is that like a lot of people, when they watch the videos, even though you've stated everything clearly, because so many individual propositions get clearly stated and they're completely new to some people, they miss a bunch of them. So I was kind of going through some of the popular feedback in Telegram groups and on Discord places and stuff like that over the recent video and the St. Fulgentius one, right? And some people were very confused because they thought that when we use the phrase double predestination, it refers to the antecedent negative reprobation and positive predestination to the first grace and to glory. And they didn't understand that wouldn't, the first wouldn't come under predestination because it's a mere permission, right? And the predestination is actually...
It would reduce to it merely.
Yeah, right. The predestination... And you did mention this a couple of times in the video, but when we say double predestination, the other predestination, other than the predestination to grace and glory, is the predestination of the imposition of punishment, right? Not the permission of damnation or the permission of the sins which demerit and cause somebody's damnation, but the very predestination of hellfire against this person, against the sense of punishment against this person.
Yeah, usually, magisterially, almost actually completely exclusive. Because, to be clear, there's no magisterial teaching on antecedent negative reprobation. People are free to, I think they should hold to it, but they're free to not hold to it, even though it's the majority opinion amongst the schools, even amongst most Jesuits. So yeah, but there's clear magisterial teaching on consequent positive reprobation. If people listening, if you don't know these terms, I'm about to go through kind of like an explanation of everything. And Hasan can chastise me whenever I'm not explaining things clearly enough. And Astro can add in a sprinkle of autism as we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and also another thing that a lot of people were confused by is the frequent use of language of foreknowledge in texts from the magisterium about election, which is odd. I mean, I explained it in the beginning of this video, but the confusion is kind of odd because like every single scholastic, no matter what school, includes foreknowledge in the definition of predestination. So it's an act that includes both the will and the intellect. So it's the foreknowledge in preparation of future gifts. So everybody includes foreknowledge under their definition of predestination. It's really just the thesis that's being presented against us says that the cause of predestination is foreknowledge. If the effect of it is foreknowledge, then it doesn't make sense that it's its cause, or at least if it's included in its definition, it doesn't make sense that it's the cause. So like that very inclusion actually disproves the principle that it's trying to set forward. But anyways, I will get back to my sheet of paper. There we go. Yeah, you guys are in the background, but they can still hear you. Okay. So when we start about name the document predestination. We talk about predestination. We first need to understand the distinction between the antecedent and the consequent will. So basically, the antecedent will is how we explain texts like God wills all men to be saved. Because there are certain texts in sacred scripture that talk about God wills, all men to be saved. God wills no man to perish. Blah 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 blah. We have a lot of texts like this that describe things that don't efficaciously come to be in reality. Then we have other texts that talk about God's will efficaciously coming to be in every circumstance. So we need to clearly distinguish between two senses of the term will. So antecedent and then consequent. So to clarify, this is a distinction on the part of the object, so on the part of the thing's will. There's a distinction that exists formally in our intellects. This isn't as if God had in himself, multiple wills or anything like that. So when it comes to antecedent will is referring to God's general, you call it God's general will. And then when it comes to consequent, we can call this God's special will. So with the antecedent will, antecedently, this is generally for the consideration of all circumstances, blah, 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 blah. With these things, these are general laws. And this doesn't always come to pass. Consequently, this is God's considering something in particular in its specific nature and its circumstances, blah, 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 blah. This is God's consequent will, and it always comes to pass. And really, the distinction between the universal ends of something and the particular ends of something. So when it comes to God's antecedent will does not always come to pass. It's not always come to pass. And we can also, from this, say that there is a certain, dang it, this sucks. It is a certain general promotion, or we can also call this an impedable promotion. Certain general promotion or impedable promotion of just working things in general management, if you may. So when it comes to the consequent will or God's special will of things in their particular natures, this does always come to pass. And this refers to, we think about special promotions. And no, these are, antecedent will is non-impedable promotions. And these refer to impedable, from it flows impedable promotions. So the antecedent will, remember, the important thing to remember is antecedent will does not always come to pass, since it is non-impedable. Oh, sorry, I mixed it up again. Antecedent will is impedable, it can be impeded. Consequent will is non-impedable, cannot be impeded. Sorry, mixed it up. Antecedent will does not always come to pass, since it is non-impedable. Impedable, gosh. See, we get these terms mixed up too. Consequent will always comes to pass, since it is impedable. Why does it always keep changing to impeccable? Well, it's also impeccable. So consequent will always comes to pass since it's impedable. Okay. So in the natural order, this is kind of easy to think of, because when we're thinking in the natural order, let me make
this. Wait, hold on. Don't you mean unimpedable? Because it always comes to pass.
Oh, I mixed it up for a fourth time. Okay, non-impedable. Very good. Thank you, Hasan. Hasan is saving everybody right now. I almost just confused literally everyone. I'm pretty sure I already confused literally everybody. It's okay. On the when I make a clip of this, I'll just clip out all of the times in which I said wrong words. Okay. How do I make this? I want to format this to pageless. There we go. Okay. So in the natural order, let's think about this in the natural order. The natural order, this is kind of easy to think about, because in the natural order, there are a lot of, just the antecedent will, just general ways of God working within creation. And, general ways of God working. And with these general ways of God working, in things particular ends, they can fail. I mean, when you look at you want to think about like the end of a lamb, it's living is good for it. But when it gets killed by the wolf, it fails to, keep its particular end. Or we can think about the end of, life is always, living beings is always the best example. Think about the end of, a tree to grow, and it gets cut down. The things fail to keep their particular end, but so particular end is impeded, but it keeps its general end because it's good for the lamb to be eaten by the wolf because the wolf needs to eat. So in the general order of things, things still keep, but maybe not the particular ends. So the antecedent will, we can also call this maybe like an extraordinary, if you may. No, not exactly the most accurate, but extraordinary. The antecedent will, we can think about it with the particular ways of God working. And then with this, the particular end is achieved. What's important is it is achieved. Did I spell achieved wrong? Gosh, I always spell words wrong. It's about to be game over. Is the E before the I? No, the I is before the E. Okay, good. Wow. Impressive. Okay, the particular ways of God working, the particular end is achieved in an extraordinary way. Okay, just reminder, extraordinary way. That's very important. And then also, and this is very important, after the manner of the agent. After the manner of the agent. So with the antecedent will bringing about these particular ends, it doesn't somehow, when it goes from consequent will to antecedent will, corrupt the nature of the thing. So if it's a rock and it falls, it naturally falls. If it's a balloon and it rises, it naturally rises. If it's an animal and it does whatever, it does it in accordance with its nature. If it's man who, wills something, it wills in accordance with his free will. When God moves in things, he moves after the manner of the agent. It's very, very important. Yeah, dyslexic answers. Critical Tomes, great video on justification. Thank you. Okay, so this is in the natural order. Oh man, I am terrible. Second one's supposed to be consequent will. Man, I am so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. Okay, so now the fun part is we can also look at this in the supernatural order. Okay, this is where things get fun because this is where we can start talking about predestination and stuff. Okay, who's DMing me right now on Discord? Oh, okay. Thank you, Hasan, for that. Okay, antecedent will. Okay, so the antecedent will in the supernatural order, if you think about it, what's the sort of thing that's important in the supernatural order? It's grace. Grace is what's important. Good job, guys. It's grace. Okay, so the antecedent will, this is going to be certain general order, the sort of general order of providence when it comes to grace, right? Okay, right. So with the antecedent will, if you have a premotion, which we would generally call like a vocation or a call of the spirit, if you may, it's going to be something, remember we looked above, it's going to be something which is general, it's something which is impedible, it has all these natures. This thing is going to be, what is it going to be, guys? It's going to be sufficient grace. I'm going to call it sufficient grace with a little asterisk next to it. Because technically, or better yet, let's call it a motion of sufficient grace. A motion of sufficient grace. Because Hasan and I have been talking about, and this is very important, and as I said, sufficient grace really refers to this entire providence, not necessarily all of those individual motions. It refers to the entire providence. But what most people are interested in is this motion of sufficient grace. This is something which, one, can be impeded. So people can resist this. It's also two, it's what's called agere. So it's a motion. It's a motion. Three, it virtually contains the it is important is that even when it fails to reach its end, it is ordered to the end. So just like with those animals that failed to keep their end, they're still ordered towards their end when they're killed and snuffed out. So what this leads to is sufficient grace virtually contains efficacious. That's important. Sufficient grace virtually contains efficacious. Sufficient grace virtually contains justification. So it's tending towards that, and it gets snuffed out by some sort of impediment. Certain motion, it's going, and it gets snuffed out. So what this leads to is, if we can think about it, let's think about a little test case real quick. So you have Adam in the garden in a state of pure nature, but this is the important part, but called by sufficient grace. If you think of a time, let's say Adam's in a state of pure nature, then he gets called by sufficient grace. God elevates pure nature to the supernatural order. If Adam were to have this sufficient grace, this motion of sufficient grace right here, if he were to have it, it would be ordered to the end, and it would, if not resisted, if not impeded up here, would terminate in that end, would terminate in conversion. So when we have in our world today, we obviously have sufficient grace. Everybody has sufficient grace. Everybody has these motions. So when they go and impede it by their evil, by their wickedness, which happens every single case, which is going to be important, happens every single case, they are held liable. Why are they held liable? Well, it was ordered to the end. All you had to do is not impede it. It's a motion which virtually contains efficacious grace. What's important is, in this case, the sufficient grace virtually contains efficacious grace. If the motion was not impeded and it went and terminates, this would be called ordinary efficacious grace. It's important. Ordinary efficacious grace. So, but you have this antecedent will of God, sufficient grace. But what happens? What happens, guys? Original sin, actual sin, rejection of this order. So people don't reach their particular ends. So this leads us now to the consequent will. It's consequent will. So the consequent will, this right here is where predestination happens, in the consequent will of God. It's very important. This is where predestination happens. Okay. It's consequent will of God. We can distinguish sort of various different motions. Because for Thomists, we are what are called infralapsarians. I can spell infralapsarians, but I can barely spell achieve. Okay, thank you. Infralapsarians. What does infralapsarian means? This means that predestination and reprobation, or actually, for ease of use, I'll just say election and reprobation. Election and reprobation suppose man is fallen. And this is against the error of the Scotists, who were supralapsarians. Oh, crap. I stopped sharing my screen. Dang. Let me put it back in. There you go. This is the error against the error of supralapsarians, Scotists, against the error of the Scotists. We don't want any Scotistic nonsense here, right, guys? Okay. But anyways, election and reprobation suppose man is fallen. So we can have two moments here. We can have where consideration of individual demerit. Consideration of individual demerit. We can have a moment that, because remember, man has fallen, failed to keep his particular end, all this, and then we can have consequence. Okay. So consideration of individual demerit. We can have the time before that. We can have the time after that, which is split between antecedent and consequent. So before this, we have man has fallen. God has given sufficient grace to this individual, and this individual has rejected this sufficient grace. So now with the consequent will, what does a consequent will do? Because we already covered this above in the natural order. Consequent will infallibly carries out particular ends after there's this failure of the antecedent will. That's what the consequent will does. So if these individuals who have fell, This individual's fallen. They're supposed to fallen. Remember, they've fallen. They've rejected sufficient grace. So now God can choose by his consequent will to bring about this particular end. That's what he can choose. So, and it's kind of confusing because we use antecedent and consequent in two different ways here, either antecedent or consequent in consideration. Actually, I'll just change this to just for ease of use to before and after. There you go. Before and after. So he's supposing man has fallen, and now he can choose whether by his consequent will to give efficacious grace. Now, he either out of the sort of pure generosity of his grace, he can either give it, and in giving it, this is what we can refer to as positive antecedent predestination. Positive antecedent predestination. Or rather, as I said before, I'll keep it. Positive antecedent election. So what God is choosing is he's choosing by his consequent will to bring about a particular end. That's what positive means. Antecedent means before the consideration of merits. And then election just means to heaven. So that's identifying the type of end it is. Okay. On the other hand, he can choose to not give it. Choose to not give it. So him choosing to not give it is not any sort of positive carrying out of a particular end. Not at all. It's not him bringing about a certain effect and a certain promotion in somebody to push them towards hell. This isn't like we have an anti-grace or anything like that. So this right here is what we call negative antecedent reprobation. Negative antecedent reprobation. And this is said to reduce to the genus of predestination. Which is why when you look at St. Thomas, he's treating both of these within the question on predestination. Although properly speaking, it merely reduces to the genus. So, negative antecedent reprobation. He chooses not to give this extraordinary motion to carry out a particular end after it's already been rejected by sufficient grace. So that's always important. Always important to keep in mind. And basically, once you keep all this in mind, any single objection that you could have to predestination is already destroyed. Okay. So now you have the individual consideration of demerit/merit. Okay. So now he chooses not to give right here. Now God goes on after to consider the sort of fall into sin that happens, the fall into actual sin that happens. So after the consideration of demerit, he chooses to give what? Give punishment. So you have people give punishment. If you have people who have fallen into sin, they've fallen into sin, they've not been given this efficacious grace, fall into sin, reject sufficient grace, and now these persons are liable to punishment. The Reform referred to this up here by the name Predestination. That's what they refer to as Predestination. And then with giving of punishment, they refer to it with something called, and I like to keep this in Latin, Predestinatio. So they refer to the previous as Predestination, the after as Predestinatio. This is after the consideration of demerit. So they give punishment, and this is called positive consequent reprobation. Positive consequent reprobation. Positive because it's actually the application towards some end. Consequent because it's after the consideration of demerits. And reprobation because it's to punishment. And this is actually referred to explicitly, so this second point, referred to explicitly in magisterial texts. Explicitly in magisterial texts. So positive consequent reprobation. And this is, since it's positive, it's properly, not merely reductively, properly called predestination. And this, in particular, is actually what's called predestination to punishment in magisterial texts. Magisterial texts refer to this, and they call predestination to punishment. So when Queersy, I think that's what Queersy refers to the one, or the one predestination of God. I think it's to glory and to punishment. I know it's hilarious. Is somebody actually in one of my videos, I quoted this text in the video, and the guy replies in the comments and quotes Council of Kiersey, one predestination of God. The guy didn't realize that I quoted that exact text in the video, and he didn't realize the next clause that actually proves that positive consequent reprobation is called predestination by the magisterium. Ridiculous. Can't win. So, okay. So what's going on with, now a lot of people, everybody wants to know what's going on with predestination to hell. What's going on with the rejections of irresistible grace, and what's going on with, there's other objections that they frequently bring forward in my comments. Predestination to hell, irresistible grace, the universal call. So what's going on with these three? Okay, with predestination to hell, the first one we're going to be treating. What's important is to look at the schema that we've given: positive antecedent election, negative antecedent reprobation, positive consequent reprobation. Okay, but predestination to hell is actually gets mentioned. It gets mentioned very particularly in the Catechism. Okay, let's actually what is I can't remember what the exact catechism number is. Is it 600? No, it's not 600.
Yeah, I think it's 600 where it says, are you talking about the one that says God predestines no one to hell?
Yeah.
That's 600 or 606. One of them.
Okay. Actually, let me just open up the Jimmy Akin article. Thank you, Jimmy Akin, for the sourcing real quick. Okay. So let's look at what this text says. Oh, it's 1037. Okay. Let's look at what this text says. So it says, God predestines no one to hell for this, a willful turning. God predestines no one to go to hell. This, a willful turning away from God. A mortal sin is necessary, persistence into the end. So, when it's referring to God predestines no one to hell, it says actually a willful turning from God, a mortal sin is necessary. What does this mean? What does this mean? Because we don't think that negative antecedent reprobation is ordered towards hell. We don't think that. Rather, this reprobation is something which is to sin. And it's to sin by the negative action of not giving, by the consequent will of God, efficacious grace. So, what is this saying? This is saying that the punishment, or positive consequent reprobation, the punishment or the decree to punishment requires that it be after the consideration of demerit. That's all it's saying. That's all it's saying. So it's denying symmetry between the way in which positive antecedent election works and the way in which positive consequent reprobation works. That's all it's doing. So that's important with the predestination to hell. That's just the context of what it's talking about. Okay, now irresistible grace. This one's pretty easy, as we already talked about. Consequent will of God works in the manner of the objects moved upon. So the grace which is given to God, well, infallibly efficacious, meaning that it's going to achieve its end, does it after the manner of freedom. Does it after the manner of the human freedom. Okay, and then universal call. God calling all people, question mark, question mark, question mark. God calling all people? No, God doesn't call all people if he does this. Well, yes, he does. Because if you remember, universal call, we can go up here. And remember our distinction between the sufficient and efficacious grace. The motion of sufficient grace calls all people to God. There are various different motions in this order. These motions are impeded. And it's ordered towards the end of God himself. So God's calling all by his sufficient grace at all times. Okay. And then there was one last thing that I wanted to bring up. Actually, I think that's about it. Okay, so you didn't listen. Okay. I already explained this. I just explained this. Okay. So right here with the antecedent will, motion of sufficient grace can be impeded. It's a motion ordered to an end, and it only fails to reach its end when it is impeded. All you have to do is not resist. And sufficient grace virtually contains efficacious grace. And also, I don't like the formulation of sufficient grace merely giving a sort of proximate potency to act. I don't like that formulation at all. That's not the formulation I used here either. As I said, I'm a marine solo enjoyer, so I prefer to like to talk about motions of sufficient grace.
Yeah. I was reading actually. Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually reading Father Marine Sola like 2 hours ago, and he speaks of sufficient grace as an imperfect agere, so an imperfect act, not pure potency, because it hasn't reached its own end yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like he uses the example of like if you had basically a bow and arrow and you shot it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the arrow keeps going. You have a little arrow going down, and then somebody like with insane Hulk strength just goes up and grabs it. If you just let the arrow like fly, I mean, it has virtually contained within itself. It was just not impeded; it would reach its end.
Yeah.
But by the resistance of the will, we resist it.
Yeah.
So yeah, resistance, all evil, all resistance, all impeding, all of it comes from us. All the good comes from God.
Yeah.
That's the main principle behind it. But the Molinist solution, the bigger problem is one, yes, they're misreading us on motions of sufficient grace. But two, there's the problem that Hasan and I have been talking about, actually. There's the problem of the fetus. There's the problem of the fetus. Have we talked to you, Astro, before about the problem of the fetus?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pretend you have a fetus that is 2 months old. 2 months like after conception. Okay. 2 months after conception. Okay, let's assume immediate ensoulment. Okay, so rational soul. And if this fetus dies, then this fetus is going to have sensus. Okay, it's going to have no. I almost did an Augustinus right there. Okay, so it's going to have what's called the pain or punishment of. I'll just say punishment of loss. Punishment of loss. So no beatific vision, and okay, no. Sorry. Gosh. Okay. So pain of loss, no pain of sense. This infant. Okay. If there's a miscarriage, if the infant dies and there's a miscarriage, the infant goes to hell. But the punishments in hell are distinct. They're different than how we often think about it. Pitchfork, torture, blah 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 blah. There isn't even interior affliction or sort of pain of conscience that happens from the fact that one knows that they could have reached grace, but they did. So it's Catholic teaching. It's Catholic teaching that all at every time have sufficient grace. All at every time have sufficient grace. Okay, keep that in mind. So that infant can't be baptized. That's why I said 2 months after conception. So infant can't be baptized. Obviously does not have the adequate faculties to be able to make an act of, any of the theological virtues. So with this infant, does that infant have sufficient grace? There were some, like our good friend Vasquez, who said no. But obviously that's problematic for the definitions of the church. There's nowhere near a restriction in the definition to say, oh, well, this is just talking about people after the age of reason. So the issue that you have to ask yourself is, does this fetus have sufficient grace? Because the fetus is damned, goes to hell. Fetus is damned and goes to hell. So how can we say, if you're going to follow the line of reasoning of the Molinists, which is basically you need to actually give, sufficiency to act, how do they deal with not only these fetuses, but also we can think of, unbaptized infants, although some will come with solutions about the parents, to baptize them. So how does it have the punishment of loss? I mean, others could say, they aren't damned, but that right there is extremely, extremely problematic to the dogmatic teaching of the church on limbo. Extremely problematic. So basically, the whole argument here is Molinists have no leg to stand on. Molinists have no leg to stand on when it comes to their particular critiques of our teaching. And rather, we need to be a lot more careful about how we're defining sufficient grace. Go ahead, Hasan.
Actually, the phrase "they aren't damned" would be really problematic for the magisterial text that you brought up in the 2 videos ago, which talk about how God has taken some from a damned mass. So, by definition, anyone who hasn't received an extraordinary or sacramental grace is part of that damned mass that they haven't been taken from yet and may not be taken from. So limbo has to be understood as a kind of it has to be understood as like a kind of membership of that mass, even though it's not like they wouldn't be going to the hell of the damned that we usually speak of.
Thanks to my wife for the coffee. Anyways, yeah. So this is the teaching of what's called the Massa Damnata. So the Massa Damnata, that just means it's sometimes translated as like condemned mass or something of this sort, but we can just call it the damned mass. So St. Augustine, this comes from his St. Augustine on Romans 9. Basically, his interpretation of Romans 9, when it talks about the potter can do anything he wants with the clay, either to shape one lump for corruption or one lump for glory. Basically, this lump is a damned lump. So St. Augustine's very clearly an infralapsarian. Scotus get destroyed. Basically, God is electing and reprobating out of a lump which is already damned. That's very important. So magisterial texts actually talk about this condemned mass or damned mass or massa damnata. And this is really interesting because you guys will hear this name thrown around a lot. Father William Most. Father William Most, he has a very peculiar text on predestination, specifically responding to Father Garrigou-Lagrange. There's a lot of, actually, I was reading through like 2 hours of it yesterday. I was like, okay, I can see that there's some okay things in here that maybe might expose people to the sort of wider, broader landscape of Thomism in the 20th century. See where this could be helpful. But really, all of his main unique theses and contributions just are very bad, especially with how he reads sacred scripture as never talking about election to glory ever, which is insane. So Father William Most, he actually denies, this is crazy, he denies the Massa Damnata. who's denying the Masa Damnata, which is, wild because, as we said, magisterial texts teach this. And he says, actually, the reason it's funny. So on the one hand, he says, I got St. Thomas right. Thomas got him wrong. On the one hand, he says that. And on the other hand, he says, St. Thomas, how do you spell that? Yeah, St. Thomas labored under a false reading of the Massa Damnata due to a terrible reading of Romans 8 through 9, which Père-Lagrange, which was Garrigou Lagrange's uncle, miraculously healed our blindness by telling us the true reading of Romans 8 through 9. So thank you, Père-Lagrange. So St. Thomas labored under false reading of the Massa Damnata, and that's what caused him some of his difficulties, and that's why he was wrong. But actually, in these other places, he was right, and the Thomas got him wrong, but actually, he's wrong. And yeah. Basically, Father William Most, he's very important to remember in this regard when it comes to the Massa Damnata. I have no idea how anybody would be able to understand properly the Massa Damnata. But yeah, that's the big issue with a sort of carte blanche rejection of Báñez's view of sufficient grace. Because I think, personally, I think that teaching on motions of sufficient grace was a wonderful, wonderful teaching that was sort of not really reintroduced, because you have like even Del Prado talking about this. And Sanchez. Sorry, why did I say Sanchez? I meant Ramiro. Okay, Santiago Ramiro. Yeah, you have guys like that talking about not really reintroduce it, but kind of make it sort of in its centrality in the Thomistic system. Motions of sufficient grace, very helpful. We also have to remember that the view basically of the antecedent will as establishing the general order of something and having some sort of general relation to a general end, that is sufficient to damn somebody, which would be, we can call this a mere posse, if you may. So I sort of integrate, I guess, both views. I think both of them have their important contributions. Okay. So, hey, I'm new. Are you Catholic or Protestant? I'm Catholic. Okay, anything to add, Hasan or Astro?
No.
Oh, somebody already asked that 10 minutes ago. Yeah, there we go. People, you guys are using your big brains here. Okay, so I have about another 15 minutes. Yeah, shout out to Lexi for coffee. But somebody asked a super chat. Okay. Could God redeem great animal pain by giving him rationality post-resurrection? How do I send your money back? Sorry, dude, I'm not answering this question. Mark. I'm assuming this isn't like a troll question or anything like that, but okay. Yeah, I will assume in argumentum that this is not a troll question. You answered your own question by okay. Okay.
I feel like this is drone trolling.
There's okay, generic term, okay, and specific difference. Okay. I will answer this term seriously. Okay, so basically what you have with the quiddity of anything is the quiddity equals generic term plus specific difference. Okay? Generic term plus specific difference. Okay. So generic term signifies the genus in which anything is in. So for us, well, technically proximate genus, but for us and for animals, we're both in the same proximate genus of animal. Us and brutes, if you may, irrational animals. We're both under the same proximate genus of animal. And the specific difference is that term or that aspect that roots the distinction between something and the rest of the genus. So for humans, or for actually, for men, for mankind, if you may, that would be the specific difference would equal rationality. So what you're basically asking is why can't God make animals human? So technically by his absolute power, he could take the antecedent matter that is animals and form them into humans by giving them rationality and disposing their bodies to receive rationality, technically speaking, blah, 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 blah. But the reason why this is so dumb is that the principle of, okay, I'll put it like this. Animal.
Wouldn't it unironically just be a different creature? It wouldn't even be the same.
Yeah, the issue is it would be a different creature. Okay, great. Thank you, Hasan.
So you're not redeeming it at all. It's like the consolation is that I'm gonna take your body and like make a new thing that's gonna like have a good life. Like okay.
No, it wouldn't even be reincarnation.
You're gonna take like it would be taking an animal corpse and then like putting a human in it. Like
it would be like taking someone's money and like erasing his memory so that he doesn't know you've stolen his money.
Yeah. So
it's like,
so based.
oh, this particular mouse died a horrible death after an eagle dropped it by accident and then couldn't find it afterwards. So on account of the great agony that it went through, it's not gonna come back to life because that's impossible. But a human soul is gonna be fixed to a mouse body, a new one. So there will be a human which is born by being like made out of like a dead animal's flesh or something. Like what? That's the weirdest version of like multiple Adam hypothesis I have ever heard. Like genuinely, that's
he just takes your body, like switches
he makes
it up
a new
into
Adam
body,
out of it,
and then just throws a soul in there.
Yeah, he makes a new Adam out of like an already formed like animal body corpse.
Yeah,
that's kind of horrific, bro.
Yeah, we answered the super chat though, so I earned it. Okay. Okay. Hey, if you're arguing that babies go to hell, you're wrong. That's sick. Have some kids and look them in the eyes and see if you can think that. One, I have 2 kids and I look them in the eyes all the time. And 2, it's Catholic dogma that babies who are unbaptized go to hell. So stop sinning against the faith. But if you actually wanted to, stop spurging and listen to what we're saying, I already explained it where up here. Punishment of loss, it merely means that they have lost the beatific vision because you need sanctifying grace to have the beatific vision. But we said no pain of sense. This is why I said sorry, Gregory, because I apologize to Gregory Vermini for departing from his teaching.
We literally all believe here that babies don't undergo hellfire ever. Like there's never going to be a baby that will go through hellfire. So the fact that you're like spurging about this is just makes you look like an idiot. You need to stop.
So
people here with children who've been around children their whole lives. Stop pretending that you have some kind of moral superiority because you have children and you look at them and you care about them.
Yeah. So true, Hasan. Yeah, but basically, pain of sense, that is fire. This is pain of loss or pain of damnation, if you may. That refers to the punishment of loss of the beatific vision. So they don't have the beatific vision. And if you want to say that certainly that you can know from certain principles that these are redeemed, you're sinning against the faith. Severe error. And you want to bring up the ITC document to me, read the ITC document. It says the same thing I'm saying right now. It talks about the theory of limbo. It's talking about having a sort of infallible certainty that God wouldn't give them efficacious grace, which we're not at all claiming. Okay, so pain of sense, fire. And pain of loss actually contains, we can call it simple loss, and then intrinsic affliction. Or we can also call it the worm of conscience. So simple loss, it's basically like you don't have it. You were called towards some sort of end by the antecedent will of God, and you didn't achieve that end. So that's simple loss. You've lost it. You've lost the beatific vision. This is the pain of damnation, or the punishment of damnation. Intrinsic affliction, sorry, I can spell. Intrinsic affliction, that refers to the type of interior pain or the sorrow, you may, that you have, that you had all of these various motions, these callings towards God that you have resisted and rejected. So infants, because they don't have motions of sufficient grace, this is important. So this is important. Simple loss, it's sufficient. So sufficient loss, it's founded on the posse, or we call this the mere potentiality of an infant to be redeemed, with assuming called it as the supernatural end. That's found on the posse. So this is founded, if you may, on Banyez's conception. I'll just put it like that. It helps stick in the memory. And then the worm of conscience, or intrinsic affliction, that is founded on the agide, the motion of sufficient grace. You had motions that you deliberately and culpably pushed down and rejected. So you have affliction about the fact that if you would have not resisted these motions, it would have terminated in that ordinary efficacious grace that we talked about. So this is all connected. It's all connected. Trust the plan, guys. Trust the plan. It's all connected. Okay. Okay. I bet I could answer a few more questions. Lame and smooth brain nonsense. Oh my gosh. You're acting like such a woman. Okay. Banning user. Oh, wait, I'm not allowed to say you're acting like a woman anymore. Hasan told me to stop saying that because he's a fake cell. Okay. Should I ban this guy? Chat, should I ban him? Is he continuing to spurg out? Oh, thank you, Biblia and Catholica. Okay. So did Thomas Aquinas interpret Romans 9 soteriologically, or is meaning election to service? Great question. Okay, so we can actually very easily figure out this question, because St. Thomas wrote a commentary on the book of Romans. So we can go right here, Pauline commentary, Romans chapter 9. Romans chapter 9. So he very clearly, if you read through his commentary on Romans 8 and 9, what you're going to see is that actually he's talking about how personal election, so this is formally talking about personal election. Personal election is somehow an icon, or a exemplar, or an example, or a illustration, if you may, of the election of peoples. So it's kind of a both and. It's not. I don't like this weird either or that people pull. It's a both and. I mean, Hasan, do you disagree with me? Okay, he's not here, but I'll ask him when he gets back. Okay, so can unbaptized infants be regenerate after the resurrection? No, that would be heretical. The reason that's heretical has to do with the fact that it is Catholic dogma that one cannot merit after death. So the giving of grace would be the giving of the principle of merits. There would be a meriting that happened after death if they were given this after the resurrection, because after the particular, you die. Remember, guys, you die. You have the particular judgment. Particular judgment is either going to send you to hell, heaven, or purgatory. So unbaptized infants, they're sent to hell. And then later they receive their bodies at the resurrection of the dead, and the general judgment, they're thrown with the wicked into hell. Okay. Okay. Oh, amazing. So Bellarmite, thinking of the priesthood. Everyone please spare a prayer for him. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, based. Okay, ban. Everybody says ban. Okay, so do you all believe that God would be just in sending an aborted baby to hell? Yes, because he's the everybody descended from Adam sinned in Adam. Yes. Read if you want to. You can read Contra Julianum. Saint Augustine very clearly defends the notion that original sin has the concept of voluntarity in it. So basically, what you're doing, it's very clear when you talk to these people. It's very clear that they're Pelagians. They don't believe in the Catholic faith. They're Pelagians. They're naturalists. And it's very clear what I presented. It's abhorrent that they have the pain of loss. Oh, really? So you're owed the beatific vision by nature? Oh, really, Gabe? You're owed the beatific vision by nature. How great of you! You must be so great to be owed the beatific vision by nature. That's heresy. It's heresy. It's called Pelagianism. You're not owed the beatific vision by nature.
I wish I was like you, Gabe.
I wish I was like you, Gabe. Yeah, I wish I was like you, Gabe, where I was owed the beatific vision by nature. That'd be really helpful, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But no, unfortunately, or actually, it would be a blasphemy to say that the beatific vision was owed by nature because for other reasons. But no, Gabe, beatific vision not owed by nature. Aborted babies, they are not owed the beatific vision in any way. They sinned in Adam. Their will was contained in the Adamic will. And they're given the requisite punishment, which is the punishment of loss. And they're given sufficient grace in that they are within the order of the antecedent will of God working supernaturally. Okay, so wouldn't Acts 14:16, 16:16 show that before the advent of Christ, all nations lack sufficient grace to obtain salvation after Christ? At least some lack the grace. Okay, let's see what particularly you were talking about. Which all the Reform told me that they don't deny sufficient grace. So that's what they told me. But you know how they can be. Okay. Who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Why? Why would that deny sufficient grace? He suffered them to walk in their own ways. Okay. Now 16:16. And we were going to the place of prayer. We were met by a slave girl who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners much gain by fortune telling. Oh, 16:6. I was about to say. It's like, come on, guys. That doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay. They went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. The preaching of the word isn't the only sufficient grace. I mean, read Saint Fulgentius's, Saint Prosper of Aquitaine's Call of All Nations. Like even early on, our authors were cognizant of the fact that there are different types of sufficient grace. Call of the gospel is not the only sufficient grace which is given. That's an external or extrinsic sufficient grace. Where's the dogma? Which dogma are you talking about? Can unbaptized infants receive baptism of desire? No, they can't. Cajetan tried to put forward this opinion, was censured universally by the scholastics. The reason they can't is if you read in the Summa, read baptism of desire, and read what baptism of desire is. Basically, I'll bring up my chart again. This might clarify this because I hear people bring this forward all the time. I have no idea why Holy Cajetan, brilliant theologian, came up with such a terrible theory. Okay, but everybody rejected it. So this is not just me speaking on my own authority. That's a terrible theory.
It wasn't just everybody rejected it, but the church actually censored those books where he wrote this and had versions published that didn't contain these claims. So it's actually there is actually direct ecclesiastical universal authority behind not holding this view.
Yeah, Pius V. I think it was Saint Pius V censured his works and basically blotted out those sections where he talked about this issue. Right. There were like book burnings of Cajetan that happened at certain universities. I love Cajetan, Holy Cajetan. I love him so much. But yeah, he was somewhat novel near the end of his life, which really tarnished his reputation. But anyways, yeah, the reason that this doesn't work. Okay, so you have baptism. What is the effect of a properly received baptism? Faith, or we can say, really, let's just say, I'll just say faith. Faith. And faith is here standing for the various virtues that go into a well-ordered soul in the supernatural order. So we can call it fides formata, call it whatever you want. Okay, faith, baptism, faith. So if basically if you have faith, you have the effect of baptism, right? Even if you don't necessarily have the sacrament, because baptism does not only have faith, but also the mark. So if you have faith, you have the effect of baptism, but not the mark. But the mark isn't necessary for salvation. Faith is. So if you have faith, you can be saved even without baptism, basically without the mark. This is what we call baptism of desire. Okay. So in infants, the effect is faith. Really, the effect is habits of the theological virtues. So my kids right now, they're below the age of reason, but my kids right now have faith. Just have faith habitually, not actually. So why wouldn't it make, from all of this description right here, why wouldn't it make any sense to say that infants had the baptism of desire? Because you would have to say that somebody below the age of reason was making an act of faith. So saying that somebody else could have desire for somebody baptized, no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, Cajetan's view is just completely rejected, both by ecclesiastical authorities and by the scholastic doctors. Okay, I think you answered your own question in the question. Can you explain why the prayer was condemned for merely sufficient grace to deliver us, O Lord? Why is this wrong if sufficient grace is always impeded without efficacious grace? Well, what is corrupting sufficient grace from reaching its end? The impediment of your will. So that's the issue. You should be praying rather to be delivered from your impediment, not from sufficient grace. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like an example. That would be I need to sit down and think one day of an example that would basically be parallel to this. But no, the prayer doesn't make any sense because it's assuming that the evil is coming from sufficient grace, which it isn't. Okay. Yes, he saw it in a soteriological sense. I am Eastern Orthodox. Baptism of desire is a scholastic innovation. Dude, I was literally just reading Saint Fulgentius talk about baptism of desire, and Saint Prosper of Aquitaine talk about baptism of desire. Saint Isidore
bro. Rewatch the stream, please.
Saint Augustine talk about baptism of desire. Dang, bro. Man, actually that is a common Eastern Orthodox L right there. Common Eastern Orthodox
but it's like
L.
a modern problem as well. It's just people coming up with random garbage to claim that Catholics got more stuff wrong than they originally believed.
No, Hasan. Let's just pretend that the Eastern Orthodox actually believe this. It'd be funny.
Can we talk a little bit more
Look at his name.
It's a joke. It's a joke, Hasan.
Oh, didn't realize. Can we talk a little bit more about universality of sufficient grace? Jenga, that's the J guy, J edits. He's made like multiple points that should probably be responded to.
Wait, J edits? Is that Jenga?
Pretty sure. Unless
Have I been
somebody's
trolling?
editing
Have I been
Jenga.
trolling Jenga this whole time?
I think so.
Dude, I'm so sorry, Jenga.
It's funnier that way though. But
Dude,
like,
why didn't you guys tell me I was trolling Jenga this whole time?
I'm kind of weirded out about like stuff like unequal distribution of graces, stuff about like the stuff in Acts about God seeing fit not to leave the nations by themselves in the past, stuff like that. Like there's already like a history of interpretation that accounts for these things that wouldn't require like the absolute limitation of sufficient grace to the Jews or something weird like that.
Okay. To answer your question, yes, people who are mentally retarded and are not baptized also go to limbo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the dogmatic texts just say whoever dies with the guilt of original sin alone, without personal sin.
That would be anybody without reason, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't just have to be infants.
Oh, dude, Hasan, game over. Game over.
What's up?
Bro's been reading Diamond.
Who, what, when, why, where? What's going on?
Dude, check the comment. Check the comment that I just put up. Literally all of our texts respond to this. Every single one of them when it talks about baptism with desire. Okay. I need Hasan to answer another question so I can pull something up real quick.
I don't want to deal with Diamond garbage right now.
Oh, okay. Whatever, Hasan.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah, they're basically like, actually, have you read this other text that talks about how baptism is necessary for salvation? That means baptism of desire is fake. Like real, we don't believe that baptism is necessary for salvation.
Yeah, Dan. Anybody who goes to limbo is going to be happier than anybody who's going to be on earth, because they're going to have like the limitations of nature that people have on earth removed from them.
Okay, so good question from Big Steve. Big Steve. WWW. I don't mean this in an impious way, but do any of the saints discuss how it is, quote, fair for all of Adam's descendants to be born with original sin when it was Adam who sinned? Yes. A lot of them do, actually. This is especially evident with throughout the works of St. Augustine against the Pelagians. And what they basically say is that original sin is some sort of privation of the this is actually using more language of St. Thomas, but it's a privation of an undue order. So we think about what formally original sin is. So materially original sin is concupiscence, but formally original sin's privation of original justice. Now, original justice is basically a call that is above one's nature. It's a call that's above nature. Because original justice orders one's soul in the supernatural order. So your intellect, your mind, your soul, your will, and your intellect are submitted to God, and you're lower to your higher. And God under the aspect of his supernaturality. So as he is in himself, not merely under the aspect of nature, which would just be natural justice. So original justice is given to man as something which is elevating, as something which is over, not due to him. So the loss of this, formally speaking, is original sin. Okay, following. Okay, good. So since it's the loss of some, formally speaking, it's the loss of something, or the privation of something that isn't due, then there's no injustice, there's no unfairness. It would be like, for example, and this is a very frequent example. Let's say my grandfather. No, actually, let's say Hasan. Hasan's grandfather is like the what is it? What's like a leader name in Arab countries? I can't remember. He's like the caliph. Hasan's grandfather is the caliph. He's the caliph of the former Ottoman Empire. And then his grandfather, let's say, lost the title because he, wasn't a good strategist or whatever. Hasan couldn't say like, "Oh, it's unfair that I'm not the caliph." Well, the caliph is something that's gratuitous, something that's above what is naturally due to you, or it'd be like some sort of honorary title which is given to nobility of some sort, and then somebody's ancestor does an evil deed that makes them lose the title. Their descendants couldn't say like, "Oh, this is unfair." Like, well, no, it's actually something that was gratuitous, so it could be taken away. Same thing with original justice. Yeah, same thing with original justice. And this is why the reason that we talk about the pain of loss is because there is the reality that this nature has been called to a supernatural end. This nature is within the supernatural order. So this nature, when it loses that end, is truly losing it. It's truly, there's a true punishment of the loss of the beatific vision which they were called to. But because there wasn't any sort of positive sin or anything like that, there's no pain of sense, and because they didn't have those motions of sufficient grace, then there isn't any sort of interior affliction because they don't sense the fact that they resisted something that was calling them, which is where the worm of conscience comes into the pains of hell. Okay, so I hope that is helpful. Hasan, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think it would be. Remember when we were talking about how like the mere fact of being a human being during a redemptive dispensation would be able to be called a sufficient grace, like an external sufficient grace? Yeah, that's really important, because one of the questions that's been asked in the chat is, okay, so if somebody isn't at the use of reason, in what sense do we say that they have any sufficient graces? Because like they're not impedible by them. Mm-hmm. So exactly what are they? Because some sufficient graces are not like motions that occur within your will that you can cooperate with, or some like external stimulus of an internal response that you could cooperate with or resist. Some sufficient graces are things like you being born in certain circumstances, or just being conceived, period, which means that now it's possible for you to receive at least an extraordinary grace. Like it's really possible. Like the notion of sufficient grace doesn't actually necessarily contain a human action. I think that's something as like a product or a response. I think that's something that needs to be explained a bit more.
Mm. True. The reason for this has to actually do with okay. I really didn't want to have to explain extrinsic denomination. Should I?
I think you should, because every time this has come up with other people, I've realized that it's like necessary to go into it.
Okay. Yeah, let me clear out my board, bring it back up. Okay, share screen. Okay, let's wipe off the. I need like a whiteboard like Jay Dyer. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so let us turn this back into pageless format. Okay, so basically, I explained this before, but remember, antecedent, broadly speaking, antecedent and consequent will. Consequent will in the antecedent will is always general providence. Okay. General providence, and consequent will is always special providence. Just remember that. And then this is distinct from the motions which pass from these. So general providence is distinct from the various different motions which are, flowing into them. Okay, because providence is something that exists fundamentally in God, whereas the motions, actually, Astro, this is your time to shine. Could you explain the difference between the formal act of God and then the promotions that are really distinct from the formal act of God? This is your time to shine. Oh no, is he not here? He was literally just talking to me about this. Okay, whatever. Yeah, general providence, and then you have, from this general providence flows general motions. And from the special providence flows special motions. Okay, if you're using your brain, antecedent will of God, from this flows, if we may, and this is talking about the supernatural order, the general call of all men, or also called the desire for the salvation of all men, the general providence, and then there are the general motions, and the general motions are motions of sufficient grace. Okay, got that all in your brain? Okay, now with the consequent will, what flows from this is the particular call, and this is the efficacious desire for the salvation of the elect. And this is actually what we call predestination, or generally speaking, predestination. You can call it election, you can call it whatever you want. It's called equal predestination, election, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And from this flows not motions of sufficient grace, but motions of efficacious grace. Okay, motions of efficacious grace flows from the consequent will. Okay, so it's important to distinguish the motions right here from the call up here. Because the call basically just orders something to some end, and the motions in particular are something intrinsic. So so remember, the call equals extrinsic, and it's merely an ordering to some end, some general end on the part of the antecedent will, or a particular end on the part of the consequent will. So the call equals extrinsic, it's ordering to some end. And then when it comes to consequent will, this is just called predestination. And then the motion is very important. The motion is something intrinsic, and it is some sort of agere towards end. Okay, so when we talk about this, it's important. The ordering to some end, the final cause of something, or the end of something, is what's called an extrinsic cause. Whereas when it comes to the formal cause, which we include a certain motion under, it's an accident which adheres in subject. This is going to be extrinsic, or we can call it by way of extrinsic denomination. And then the motion is intrinsic, or by way of intrinsic denomination. Okay. So call extrinsic, motion intrinsic. Very important. Okay. So when it comes to those with reason, reason theology, reason, those with reason, they have the extrinsic call, the extrinsic ordering to an end, extrinsic call, extrinsic ordering, extrinsic call, extrinsic ordering, blah, 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 blah. So they are in the supernatural order by way of extrinsic denomination. Extrinsic ordering, extrinsic call, extrinsic end. And this, as I keep harping on, is why there is the pain of loss. This is why there's the pain of loss, because they're truly ordered to this end, and if they don't acquire this end, then they've lost their end, supernatural end. So this, simply speaking, is present. Oh crap! Those without reason, I'm an idiot. Those without reason, extrinsic ordering, extrinsic call, extrinsic end, and therefore, if they don't achieve their end, they have the pain of loss. But since they know they don't have this intrinsic motion, then Okay, am I back? Oh, this is so game over. I can see my one bar right now. Oh man.
Thought that was me who disconnected. Okay.
No, it was me. Okay, am I back?
Okay.
When did I cut out, guys?
You were saying since they know that they don't have, and then you cut off. I think you cut off again.
This is terrible. That's probably like the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you were making fun of my internet. Now it has happened to you.
Yeah, I got so,
You're roboting. Your voice is terrible. Rip. Mm.
Okay, I'm back. Am I back?
Yes, you're back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you're not back. Jimmy Aiken hacked his Wi-Fi. Mods, please ban Jonathan Tassawu because he says Thomism has been debunked by modern science. Thank you. I had the best food possible, thank you.
Were you guys literally silent this entire? You guys suck. You I'm gonna. Okay, it's back. It's back. I think it's back. Are we back?
Are we live? Yeah.
Are we live? Are we live? You were silent. You.
Okay, sorry, I was just handling a few things.
Bro happens to leave right when I disappear for 2 minutes. Okay. So
Yeah,
where
sorry
was I,
about that.
guys? Where was I? Where was I?
You
Hasan.
said since they know that they don't have
Okay, yeah.
because you cut off.
Basically, yeah. Okay. So remember, final cause is an extrinsic cause. The call itself is before or antecedent to the motion, and the motion flows from the call. So when there's some sort of, both of you guys can mute, by the way. When there's some sort of defect of subject, such as when there's a lack of rationality or whatever there may be, and it doesn't get received as an intrinsic form, there's still an extrinsic denomination because it's still called to that end. So, if you remember all that, so the call, the motion, extrinsic, intrinsic. So when we have those without reason, they only have the extrinsic ordering, the extrinsic cause, extrinsic end, because end's an extrinsic cause. So we only say that they are in the supernatural order by way of extrinsic denomination. And therefore, they only have the pain of loss because they didn't reach their end, but there's no intrinsic affliction, which I spelled affliction wrong. There's no intrinsic affliction. Gosh, I gotta mute that guy. There's no intrinsic affliction. Sorry, there's no intrinsic affliction because there wasn't this reflection on the fact that one did not achieve their end through the motions which were given to them, which are the motions of sufficient grace. So, and they don't have the pain of sense either. Okay, so those with reason have an intrinsic ordering, and then an intrinsic call, and then the motion that terminates in the end, basically. So there's motion that's going into them, motion, and they're impeding this by the choice of their own wills. And because it terminates in ordinary efficacious grace, they are held liable because it's their fault. They're the ones rejecting it, blah, 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 blah. So they don't only have the pain of loss, but they also have the affliction because they understand, their failure with the means they've been given, and they have the pain of sense. The pain of sense is the hellfire. So basically, when we're talking about sufficient grace, it's important to distinguish between the general call that is for the salvation of all men and all in place with his end. That's all we really mean by sufficient grace, this mere posse that we talk about. And then the motion that flows from this call, which is really distinct from the call itself. Which Astro, if he was paying attention 5 minutes ago, he could explain to you guys, but he wasn't paying attention. This is one of his favorite things to talk about, is the distinction between a promotion and the formal act on the part of God. But, it's whatever.
I was paying attention to you. What do you mean?
Nope, I asked you like 10 minutes ago, bro, and you were silent.
Oh, maybe I was taking a nap. I'm sorry.
Bro was taking a nap.
Bro says he was taking a nap. He was probably eating juju kebab.
Yeah, he's eating kebab.
I actually
was
not
doing
eating
it in his sleep.
Okay. No, but 10 minutes ago you cut off.
So, you know what happened? The reason why I cut out, Augustine, we have like a power strip that connects all the things, and the power strip has a little switch on there. And I go out there, and Augustine is like turning on and off the switch, the power switch that connects to Wi-Fi. And that's why I kept coming back on. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're good. Then he would just turn it back off. Yeah, so it actually was him.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Augustine's a moment.
Wagner, couldn't someone use 1 Corinthians 7:14 to infer the faith of the parents can make the unbelieving child sanctified if they don't get baptized? Well, that's not at all the historic interpretation of the passage.
That would be such an absurd interpretation of the sense of the text. Sorry, man. Jenga, that's painful. You need to go and look at like Lapidae and Salmeron. Look what St. Thomas says. Look what St. John Chrysostom says as well. Like it's like cross-traditional that there's like a united interpretation contrary to this. And the people who have other interpretations also have interpretations contrary to this one.
Yeah, I just need. Yeah, Wagner forgot to pay his Wi-Fi bill, but the Vatican wired him his Pope Splainer check just in time. So true, King. So true. Go to the local McDonald's and hook up to their Wi-Fi. I could probably do that. Okay. Is there anything Miser Eckhart? Miser Eckhart. I don't feel like talking about Miser Eckhart. Is there anything important that we still have not talked about? Any objections we have not taken? It seems like okay. I'm gonna just kind of as like a synthesis. You can, if you may, if you like, you can complain about this account and say like, oh, I still don't know how Mir Passe makes it's sufficient. Blah 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 blah. You still complain about it. This is really, I mean, to me, this is the only coherent account of the manner in which we talk about sufficient grace for all men. Unless you want to take the Vasquez pill and just say that sufficient
and just
grace
say it's not.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, then you would have to say, so when scripture says God desireth the salvation of all men, it means all men who have the use of reason. Like, then how are you going to stop it from withdrawing to only landowning males over the age of 18? Like, what's going to stop you from just introducing more conditions? What's going to stop you?
Yo, all men are created equal, own slaves. Vasquez, all men are called to heaven. Infants,
but not
excluded.
all of them.
Yeah, infants excluded.
All does not mean all. Come on, bro. Oh, that's actually I forgot about Dan's question. This is something I really wanted to talk about. Can we talk about predestination anxiety a little bit and how it's actually legitimate?
Okay. Where's this question? Okay, here
Dan restated it just now.
Okay, I will take away my screen. Okay, so can you talk about temptation to despair that happens when thinking about reprobation before demerit? How to virtuously cope rather than going for errors. Okay.
Great question.
Go ahead, Hasan.
Okay, so basically, the most important thing that you have to remember is that there is no anti-hope habit within the soul, right? There's no you can't be somebody who, so there's a legitimate ground for hoping for one's salvation because there's something positively placed in you, grace, which is the seed of glory, right? So you have something within you that is oriented towards glory. But someone cannot have the reverse for reprobation. It's impossible, right? There's nothing ever positively placed in you which is a ground of anti-hope for damnation. Okay, so first of all, so that's the first thing to say. So that you always have legitimate, rational cause whenever you have grace that you might be saved, right? Now let's go above this, above positive things in you and whatever, and just go to the root of the question, which is that some people are okay, but regardless of whatever I have right now, God has decreed that at the end I might not persevere, or he has decreed that I will persevere. How am I supposed to deal with that? And how am I supposed to deal with the fact that all of my pious thoughts and all of my bad thoughts, all of my good actions, all of my bad actions have been foreordained? All of them, either by permission or causation. Either decrees of permission or decrees of predestination. How am I supposed to cope with that? So this gets into something very important and very beautiful, which is about the logic of analogy. Okay, when we use proportionate analogy to speak of God, we always have to remember that the analogy we're using is not that which we are analogizing. Okay, so you can't look at how we understand God's foreordaining and production of human activity and of creaturely free activity and be oh, this is just the same as a puppet master twiddling his fingers so that a puppet jigs around, right? Why? Well, created causes can only cause other created things to have an effect in them in two ways: violence and persuasion. Okay. Now, with violence, there's like a direct compulsion of the emotions, right? And that's the case with the puppet master. And in persuasion, you don't directly cause that something happens, but you just make it more likely, right? But God doesn't act with us in this way, strictly speaking, because he doesn't act upon us as like some merely external cause, compelling us by like a force from outside to make us do what we otherwise wouldn't have done, right? This is why St. Thomas says, if this was the case, then and there was violence, then we would be able to say that man would will and not will the same thing in the same way simultaneously, which is absurd. So we always have to remember that whenever we make these analogies, there is an imperfection in the analogy that we are negating. God is not a puppet master, and he's not actually like a painter with a paintbrush, because paintbrushes are inanimate and they're moved by violence. There's a limitation to this analogy of God like writing your life as if you were the pen he was writing with. There's a limitation. The analogy is good, but only to describe certain aspects of this. Okay? And when St. Thomas says that, like, God using a free will to bring about a certain free action is like a man using an instrument like a hammer or a knife, he doesn't mean that in an absolute sense. It's an analogy, and it's always limited. Okay? So basically, what this comes down to, the reason I said it's beautiful is because there are some things that on this side of eternity, and maybe forever with some other things, we won't understand. We're not capable of understanding. We can affirm that they are the case, but we can't understand them, right? And there are things about God, for example, when we say that God is simple, we're just affirming that he's without composition, that he's not made of parts. We've never seen simplicity like God's. We can look at a circle and say, hey, a circle is simple. It's a two-dimensional shape and it only has one side. And we can take that as a symbol or analogy for God's simplicity. But God isn't simple the way a circle is simple. Right? It's not possible to look at it that way. So really, predestination anxiety, first of all, is natural, because human beings naturally don't see what God is actually like. We don't see the manner of divine causation. We can only analogize it with all these limited different analogies from contingent causes, right? Secondly, not only is it natural, it's scriptural. There's places in the Psalms and other places where people are like, how much longer is it going to be like this? Why did you decide that I would be allowed to do this? Why did you allow me to sin, etc.? There's many places like this in the Psalms, many other places in scripture where you see things like this. There's lots of these moments. Saying these things to God is not despair. If it was despair, it wouldn't be an inspired prayers that the church uses her whole life, every year. It's just not the case. You're allowed to go to God and say, why did you decree this for me? And not say that as a complaint merely, but as a real question. Because when it's something like, why did you decree this about me? Exclamation mark. That's different from, why did you declare this about me? Sincere question mark, right? Because the first is the path to despair and pride, and the second is the path to discernment. Very different, right? So if you want to virtuously cope about things, turn those exclamation marks, those complaints, keep them as complaints, because you're allowed to complain to God a little bit, but make them sincere complaints and inquiries. If you want to know more about this, read St. Thomas's commentary on Job, where he goes into this in a lot of detail, right? And it's an amazing book. And I'm really sad and kind of ashamed that we don't talk about it more in these circles, St. Thomas's commentary on Job. You can find that on the Aquinas.cc website. Okay, so you can find this about predestination. You don't. This is one of the things that you need to do. if you don't experience predestination anxiety, you probably have some kind of defect going on, either in your understanding or your emotions. And if you do experience it, then you have two paths to take. Either you can accept and integrate this anxiety that you have, or you can start looking to hold some erroneous position or another. Okay? Integrating it means accepting that you're going to be anxious about it and turning your exclamation marks into question marks, going to God and asking to be illumined by his grace and by the gifts of the Holy Spirit. There's 4 intellectual gifts, remember: wisdom, counsel, science, or knowledge. And my brain just fell apart. Christian, what's the 4th intellectual gift? Wisdom, knowledge, understanding, counsel. Yeah, my bad.
Faith.
So, bruh. So basically, like, you have to pray for graces and pray for supernatural help, so that you'll have a knowledge, not by being able to figure things out by arguments or reason through these things, but a certain illumination that will bring you peace about this topic. And the thing is, if you learn to make peace with this, you'll learn to make peace with a lot of other things too. And sometimes people make this into like a really difficult topic that most people shouldn't deal with, or that it's a very advanced big brain topic. It isn't at all. And basically no one has ever claimed this. And some people try to misquote St. Ignatius of Loyola to try and like turn him into someone who's like, no one should ever talk about predestination, not understanding the sense of what he meant there. I won't go into trying to exegete that, but I'll just talk about what has been said before, which is that by St. Paul, or, you know, in the letter of the Hebrews, he says, I don't remember the chapter, Christian can remind me. Now let us move on from the elementary doctrines of Christ.
6.
Hebrews 6.
Mm-hmm.
After enumerating a bunch of different doctrines, one of which is the judgments of God, which means his decrees, including imposition of punishment, the grant of rewards, the predestination to the first grace, predestination of sufficient graces, etc. Okay? So basically, predestination is something very important to deal with early on, and to deal with your feelings about early on, and to integrate early on. Garrigou-Lagrange and other authors often talk about how understanding the principle of predilection and getting it at a spiritual level is necessary for fostering Christian humility. And since Christian humility is the ground which makes possible the development of all the other infused moral virtues, of all the other Christian virtues, you kind of have to deal with this. If you don't deal with predilection, which is an aspect of the mystery of predestination and reprobation, if you don't deal with predilection, which is the principle that God loves first, so anything that is better than another in any respect is so, because it is loved by God so as to be so, right? If you get this principle and meditate upon this principle, you'll be able to develop a kind of humility that you haven't had before, conditioned by things that you didn't know before. Okay? And if you can develop this kind of humility, lots of other things will begin to spring from that well-tilled soil that you've just helped to cultivate, right? Lagrange talks about this throughout various different ones of his works, and he repeats himself about this a lot. So it's something that he kind of probably had to tell lots of different people, because he pretty much has this from memory, like repeats pretty much the same points in the same order in everywhere he touches on it, right? So this is to say, you're supposed to be anxious. It's okay. You're not an idiot for feeling like this. It's literally impossible for you as a human being to actually see like God in himself, and how it's not that he's like an unfair human doing unfair things, right? It's impossible. You can gain certain level of understanding about these different topics and about decrees and things like this. You can learn more about it. You can understand how it's coherent, but that emotional distress is kind of just gonna be there until it gives way through that sincere questioning and asking for the grace of illumination. until it gives way to a profound awe and majesty about God's majesty and about the littleness of our merits and the immensity of our offenses against God and things like that. So this is the way forward, accepting and integrating that predestination anxiety, not trying to run away from it, not telling yourself that you're stupid for feeling it either. Okay, that's the long and the short of it, to put it together. I hope that's useful, because I think that's present in many of our writings, but you don't get to hear it very often online.
Could you talk more about people are asking about people who don't get anxiety when they read about these things?
Okay. It's probably bad, because most of the time, if you're in the purgative way, especially, and you don't feel any anxiety from it, it can mean, in some cases, it can mean that what you're doing is like mere intellectual exercise, and you don't actually like really assent to the things you're reading about as true, or you just don't understand their ramifications for your actions, right? And third, it could also be that you just have a certain frigidity in your affections. You might just be a more frigid person in your affections, which is it's a common temperament, but it is a kind of defect, especially if you consider Christ as the exemplar cause. St. Thomas, in his treatise on Christ's Passion, he explains how Christ had a perfectly constituted relationship with his passions. So when he breasted his suffering on the cross and in the agony in the garden, when he actually took it upon himself, as St. Newman says in his homily on, he uses that language of breasting his suffering, right? St. Newman mentions in his homily on Christ's mental suffering the same point as St. Thomas, although with a little bit more affective elaboration. St. Thomas says that, and St. Newman says that, Christ actually experienced more suffering from the same causes than if we were to go through the same things, right? Because he had a perfectly constituted affectionate, like set of affections and passions. So not only the sensory suffering, but also the emotional suffering from knowing that all these people, from thinking about the fact and having the emotional response from thinking about all these people that he loves are going to damage themselves so horrifically by sin and go through so much suffering because of original sin in a fallen world, right? So basically, through like aligning yourself with the Sacred Heart, you will start to feel more anxiety about these things. The STS mentions in one place about how Christ's weeping for Lazarus, even though he knew he was going to raise him from the dead, or about how he lamented over the failures of repentance of the people of Bethsaida and Jerusalem, and how he said, "How I wish that I could gather you under my wings as a hen does her chicks," etc. Things like this. Even though he, as God, is the one who chose to allow them to refuse his call to repentance and chose to allow them to be damned, etc. Right? As a man, the actual proper reflection for a human being of that divine knowledge and divine power is shown in Christ. The proper response to this is shown in Christ. To experience admiration of God's justice, etc., and to experience horror for sin and for the suffering due for it. And also to experience some kind of anxiety, not by an ignorance or a lack of knowledge, but a certain anxiety, an anxiousness for the and a distress for the meriting of satisfaction and grace for others. So pretty much most of what I've thought about it.
Can I add something to what Hasan said?
Go ahead, Astro.
Yeah, so this on despair and like unconditional election being like distressful and all that and causing anxiety. So it's actually in Father Lacroix's predestination work. So he's replying to the objection that, well, if we're predestined and it's not based on merits, then Doesn't matter what I do. I'll go to hell if I'm predestined to go to hell and all that. He says, the doctrine of St. Thomas, far from being discouraging, brings out into bold relief that the formal motive of hope, which is not man's effort, but God's infinite power to help, the formal motive of a theological virtue cannot indeed be something created, and the supernatural effort we make, aroused to this by the efficacy of grace, cannot make this latter efficacious. It is better, therefore, as Saint Augustine said, to trust in God who is sovereignly good and omnipotent, rather than in ourselves and our inconstancy and weakness. For, notwithstanding in the obscurity of this mystery, we are far surer of the rectitude of the omnipotent God's intentions than of our own. Let no one, therefore, say, if I'm predestined, whatever I do, I shall be saved. If not, whatever I do, I shall be damned. To speak thus is as false and absurd as it is for a farmer to say, if the time for harvest is bound to come, whether I work or sow the seed or not, it will come.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I wanna add there like just a note on the importance of remembering sufficient graces and the possibility of and the importance of like looking for them and cooperating with them when they come, so that you don't feel like, if I'm not in a state of grace right now, or if I'm in a state of grace right now, there is literally nothing I can do to work for the preservation of my grace or to regain grace or whatever, right? That this is completely false. The whole point, the whole pastoral point of talking about sufficient grace, rather than just turning it into like a sort of like interior Catholic polemic to say, oh yeah, we do believe in universal salvific will. Here's how it works, right? It's actually supposed to be very important for keeping in mind in these situations. You have to remember that, and Lagrange talks about this when he talks about sufficient grace, and he gives biblical examples to show that it's there. Sufficient grace is extremely important to remember, is always there in some shape or form in your life, unless you're actually already damned. There are always sufficient graces in your life at every moment. There's always something to look for and make the most out of in order to congruously merit a moment where God offers you efficacious grace.
That's the important part right there. Is this is something Cajetan actually brings up, and Marine Sola highlights quite clearly. Is when it comes to sufficient grace, while I was explaining to everybody like that motion that goes all the way from sufficient grace to ordinary efficacious grace, this entire motion right there. Well, I said that it gets impeded, because of our sinfulness. On the one hand, I guess I wasn't clear enough with this. On the one hand, God can, rather than like, let's say you don't impede it for a little bit in an easy thing. St. Thomas talks about this in Summa Contra Gentiles. Says this can be not impeded for easy things, little things, for a short time, but eventually, our evil is going to take over and we're going to impede it. But to not resist and to pray for that efficacious grace that God grant by his consequent will to redeem us in an infallible manner. That is within the scope. That is within the scope. So it's not like, and St. Thomas talks about this when he talks about prayer. It's not like those in a state of mortal sin. So if you're in a state of mortal sin, or those who are not yet converted, it's not like their prayers are completely inefficacious when they're turning to God and asking for him to show mercy upon them. There may be, and some theologians actually say there is an infallible connection between, not resisting that grace and praying, and then the granting of said mercy. So that's important to remember on the one hand. And on the other hand, it's also important to think about those who are justified. Is when you're justified and you've been converted, you still have sufficient graces. They're just not obviously sufficient in the sense that they're ordered towards your conversion. They are ordered towards your further justification. So pray to God to to a sort of dispose you, to help dispose you towards not impeding those further sufficient graces. And yeah, this is very, very important right there. Very important. And what's so great about Father Sola, he gives this. I don't think this is exactly entirely fair to the Calvinists, but I'll still give it as like a good illustration of basically what I'm talking about. Is basically you have you can think of Pelagianism, Thomism, and then Calvinism. So Pelagianism, you can be more gooder than what God gives. With Calvinism, and again, this isn't exactly the most fair, but this is a helpful conceptual framework. Calvinism, you can be neither gooder nor worse than what God gives you. So you're lockstep right there. With Thomism, you can never be better because all goodness comes from grace, but you, by your own will, can be worse. So what is the way to holiness for the Thomists? Well, it's the way that Father Lorenzo Scapoli talks about. It's recognizing your own weakness and begging the help of God not to impede all of those various graces that he showers upon you at all moments. That's the way of holiness, because you can make yourself worse. You're basically asking God, please help me not make myself worse. Please help me accept those graces which are already given. So this is actually why this is the interpretation that, if you're curious, Marine Sola gives. I think it's in his second or third article of First Corinthians 4:7. I think it is. What distinguisheth thee? I think it's 1 Corinthians 4:7. But yeah, that's the interpretation he gives of 1 Corinthians 4:7. Is you can never be better. You can never make yourself better. You can't do more with grace. You can only do less with grace. It's the important part. And I have some super chats, unless you have anything that I need to answer. Unless you have anything else to add, Hasan.
No, I think that's great. We went over all the pastoral stuff, I think.
Okay. Yeah, Unionist Initiative. We need to get some clips out of this stream. I think we can get some good clips to post this week. Okay, so Unionist Initiative. And then I probably won't be answering any more normal chats, just super chats. So if you want to ask questions, unless they're like really, really good pressing questions that we forgot to discuss, I'll probably be just answering super chats. Okay. So Unionist Initiative, he said Matthew 25:34-35 plus mere corporate election plus William Lane Craig plus Salasio David on Twitter told me semi-Pelagianism isn't heresy plus CCC 1037 says you're a Calvinist heretic. You know what's hilarious? Actually, Unionist Initiative. I got rid of the comment. So yeah, I get like emails like this, that calling me, quote, very, very gay and AIDS riddled for my videos on predestination. But also I get like these comments where everybody's just spamming CCC 1037, say double predestination's heresy, CCC 1037. It's like, wow, it's almost like I've read that before.
There's literally the worst thing is that hundreds of paragraphs later, there's another paragraph that says grace prepares and elicits the very free response of man. So it's like, maybe you should take both of those paragraphs into account.
The issue the CCC just has, obviously we agree with everything it says intrinsically, but when it comes to ordering and scope, the sectional predestination is so bad. It's terrible.
There's a lot of things that if you're trying to take the catechism and like construct a basic understanding of like the supernatural organism and its relationship to the ascetical life and stuff like that, there's way too much missing. Like I actually think for all of their problems, the Eastern Catholic catechisms are way better at explaining like a method of the spiritual life, like Christianity as like what enables and a method of the spiritual life and presents that manner of the spiritual life. Like the CCC is like too much of a catalog. Because
yeah, I mean, even this is, I think, like a historic problem in Catholic catechesis. So, I mean, if you go to the Catechism of Trent, also no mention of predestination, no section on predestination.
It's just there implicitly.
Yeah, of course it's there implicitly, but it seems like that should have been. I mean, who am I? But it seems like that should have been something which was present in the catechesis of laymen.
There's a lot of people who've pointed this out. Like it's not something like weird for you to say. A lot of like very high profile theologians and even some bishops have pointed out that this is an issue.
Yeah, because I mean it used to, I guess it used to be, you know, during the time of the Reformation, obviously you're opposing Calvinism. But I mean, now it's just, Francis even talks about this, is we have a new Pelagianism now that we're suffering. And the only way to deal with this new Pelagianism is by bringing back serious discussions about promotion, grace, predestination.
If you guys want to read about this, if you guys want to read about this, he has a big document where he talks about this specifically, and it's called Gaudete et Exsultate. You should read that. But he also talks about it in his catechesis series on evangelization, where he talks about like there's way too much of a loss of the sense of the Holy Spirit as the principal protagonist of the life of conversion.
Yeah, that's how you spell it, guys, if you're wondering.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like it'd be perfectly in line with if it's good enough, I might answer a different question, but mostly predestination. It seems perfectly in line with what Francis would want to hold to, but the reason it's I mean, we've gotten to the sort of stage where Jimmy Akin is openly saying that the Catechism is denying unconditional election, and I'm sure that isn't an opinion that he alone has expressed. I'm sure he got that from somebody else, from theologians.
There's also a lot of people. You mentioned this in your video. People who like call themselves Catholic Molinists, but they take Protestant Molinist positions. Like there's a weird spread of a strange Arminianism, like certain that's not really fair, but like certain Arminian principles. Like there's a couple of guys I've seen some Catholics, like teenagers, come to me and say, "Oh, can't I take this position? This guy was studying theology like 20 years ago, and he's saying this." And there's people online making YouTube videos saying stuff like, or writing articles saying stuff like, God is actually powerless to save all human beings because of free will. And there is no possible world wherein every single human being could be like pre-moved through congruous and moral pre-motion to like receive efficacious grace. Like there are some people who actually hold like these extremely horrible, like horrendous positions, which and clearly these views are products of predestinarian anxiety. And I think there's like sociological reasons for this like psychological tendency in modern Catholics. I don't think it's a direct Arminian or Protestant influence. I think that it's that Catholics are now under some of the same conditions as those Protestants who started going in a weird direction in predestination a few hundred years ago. Christian and I have talked about this a few days ago. Have you got anything to say about that? Because it would be related to like the weird stuff about babies that Calvinists and Arminians would use.
Man, I don't even want to talk about that. That's such a cringe moment.
It's important because we see people going through all of the same pressures and responding to them in the same way now.
Basically, a lot of the this is like the continental Reformed history that they don't teach you in schools, that I was so privileged to learn about. But basically, the Arminians, for those who don't know, the Arminians or the remonstrant. How do you pronounce that?
No idea.
Remonstrant.
I always said remonstrant.
I haven't said that word. Yeah. I haven't said that word in like 3 years. Dang. But basically, they were rebelling against certain theses put forward by the Reformed Church. There was a synod which was called a Dort, and actually it was an international synod. So there were Reformed theologians from England, famously Bishop John Davenant was called. There's Reformed theologians from Germany, all the countries. They came together and discussed questions of grace and predestination and such. And actually, this is where a lot of things got clarified, because the Arminians, they were pushing a lot of misinterpretations, although some of them were correct, misinterpretations of Reformed beliefs. So one of them was, a misunderstanding of reprobation, basically equal ultimacy, what we would call today equal ultimacy. It was condemned, the Synod of Dort, if you look at the conclusions of the Synod, the canons of Dort. But another one of them, this was crazy, is the way that they converted a lot of people to their beliefs is they told women that their children, if they died before baptism, would be damned to hell, which is true, of course, and we explained the sense in which that's true earlier. But basically, they kind of dogmatized a certain view of covenantal membership amongst children at the Synod of Dort. And the reason for this was because all these women were being converted to Arminianism due to their preaching about this. So yeah, these sort of like social factors, actually do make a big difference. And okay, so by the way, Vinco Mortem is Mata Damnata definitive. I've heard that popes like John Paul II and Benedict XVI have been hopeful about the greater number of being saved laws. Yeah, this is just I don't know why Anglo literature does this, but Massa Damnata does not mean more people damned. That doesn't, no, it means that election reprobation happened from man has fallen. I don't know why modern literature talks this way. I think it comes from von Balthasar. I don't know why he says this. Massa Damnata does not have anything to do with the amount of people who are saved.
Unionist Initiative doing the thing where he asks a question in multiple parts with separate donations again.
Chad. Okay, so I need to answer these two up here actually first before I answer the recent ones. Sorry guys. I mean, these guys gave super chats like 30 minutes ago and I still haven't answered them. Okay, buy a dire board, bro. W stream, by the way. Thank you. Okay. Sarah 7-157 and 61.
Yo, it's Woody. No freaking way. Sorry.
Okay, so why would the beatified still need to derive accidental beatitude from creatures by evening/morning knowledge? Is essential beatitude insufficient? Okay, so it's called accidental beatitude because it's accidental. That may seem a bit pedantic, but basically, essential beatitude is adequate. Yes, it's adequate to render somebody blessed because they have reached their end. But there are also certain just requests that one may have when it comes to accidental beatitude. That's just the long and short of it. Is I'm trying to think. Could you think of a created analogy for this, bro? Analogy for this? No, you have essential beatitude. I mean, you have this blessedness, and there's other stuff that you could say like, oh, like that I could have a just claim to that. Like that would be nice to like talk to, my dead wife or something like that. It's a just claim. It's not that it's insufficient in itself. Like theoretically, there could be no accidental beatitude by the absolute power of God. That would render people sufficiently blessed. Okay, so more super chats. Okay, so do you think modern philosophy causes anxiety? I have no idea, bro. Sorry.
The anxiety we were talking about earlier, the predestinarian anxiety among Catholics today, and the incorrect responses to it becoming much more popular today.
I really think it has to do more with people's discomfort with mystery. This is something that is central for St. Prosper of Aquitaine. He has some really good sections in his Call of All Nations. where he talks about this, and he says, well, what we need to do, and actually Father Most brings this up in the forefront, which I actually found to be quite helpful, although I don't think he follows through with his intended plan. But basically what we need to do is we need to look at Revelation. What does Revelation say? And then hold to what Revelation says and hold to the teaching of the church. So even when it becomes uncomfortable by the virtue of faith and by hope in God, we can be settled from the fact that we have an infallible authority, which is teaching us these various things. So, I mean, in a sense, yes, because of the spirit in which philosophical research is done today is in a spirit of novelty rather than of any extrinsic or intrinsic authorities. So, yeah, I think that does actually play into it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a big part of it, and I also think that a big part of it is that in modern philosophy, you find representations of Protestant versions of ideas that originally came in Catholicism. One of the most famous ones of people like, William Lane Craig is not Catholic. He's a Molinist, though. And Molinism is from Catholicism. So I can agree with William Lane Craig's view of predestination and be a Catholic. No, you can't. You can't do that because he's not a Catholic Molinist. He just believes in Scientia Media. And not really, because you have to believe in God to believe that God has middle knowledge, and he thinks that God is like a Cerberus creature and weird stuff like that. So no, like that. First of all, he's functionally an atheist. You can't believe in stuff like that. You just can't believe in stuff like that. I hope he's not going to hell, but to me it doesn't look that great right now. Believing in stuff like that. And also, like, you just can't believe in a version of predestination just because it has the Molinist stamp on it, taught by Protestants, because they don't have in mind any of the other boundaries dogmatically that we've been discussing in this video, universality of sufficient grace being one of them, all sorts of things. They just don't think about any of the stuff because all they're concerned about is like believing in middle knowledge. So don't copy theological views from Protestants. Just don't do it. Terrible idea. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, oh yeah. What I was laughing at, where was it? Oh yeah, and Antonius. Wow, even the Reformed can get a council going. Rip the Eastern Orthodox.
I was hoping you wouldn't do that. It was funny, but it's such like a. It's
okay. It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
It's such a low blow.
It's. Based sit out of Dort. Okay, so the link on your website for Father A.M. Henry's Theology Library set is to the wrong book, and you send the correct one. Yeah, you just have to go to lulu.com/spotlight/militant Thomist. I will send the link in the chat. That should have all my books on there. Okay, there's another one.
You should edit the website.
Don't they get condemned to limbo because they're still innocent? Limbo. Okay, so what is commonly called limbo is just a part of hell, or really, part is kind of a weird way of speaking. It's really a species of
deal
punishment.
With some connotations. Yeah, we should deal with some connotations. So
okay. So Super Chat's answer. Okay, so Super Chat's answer.
Yeah,
you want to go back to this?
Yeah. But just quickly, in English, a lot of people just because the word hell means like screaming, like wailing and the gnashing of teeth, etc. That's what people think of when they think of the word hell, right? Hell is a Germanic term from Germanic pagan religions. Scripture uses an equivalent phrase, Hades, right? Hades obviously being from Greek paganism, but Hades here is used as a substitute for the Semitic term Sheol. Now, Sheol is just the afterlife minus grace. That's all it is. It's just where the range of different possible places you could go without the elevation to grace, without sanctifying grace, right? Without glory. So Sheol just describes like it encompasses Gehenna, which is a place of like the burning of waste material originally in somewhere in Canaan. It encompasses limbo, the bosom of Abraham, limbo of the fathers, limbo of the infants, encompasses purgatory, like all of these things, right? So Sheol contains all this stuff. Sheol is neither a good place nor a bad place, absolutely speaking. It's neutral because it contains these different things. So you would be wrong to just think, oh, babies plus hell equals horrific thing to consider, because you're using English word connotations way too much when you think about this and have your emotional responses, right? So just keep that in mind. When we say limbo is part of hell, we just mean limbo is in Sheol. We don't mean that it's like the same place as where like people are screaming and burning in black fire and can't see anything and would hate anybody if they came across them. Like it's not a place of horror like that. Just don't connect them in your head at all.
So true. Okay, so probably I'm just going to give a quick glance at the rest of the questions, but it'll probably be the last one unless there's super chats. Okay, so could you expand more on what Masa Damnata means? Okay, so Masa Damnata, that just means damned mass.
Let's go.
So all the damned mass. So remember the punishment of sense? That's the punishment damni, punishment of loss. So all this is saying is that all of human nature, as received by Adam, suffers intrinsically the pain of loss. So it's a damned mass and damnable. That's a statement from St. Augustine. I think it's massa damnata et damnabilis. So basically what this means is that when God elects and reprobates, he is electing and reprobating out of this damned mass. So those that he's pulling out, he's sort of pulling out of the fire when he elects them. And those that he's leaving in, he is leaving them in to the destruction that flows from their own wickedness. So Masa Damnata Damnabilis actually helps us not fall into double predestination.
Yeah.
In the condemned sense. In the condemned sense. So this actually, the Masa Damnata, rather than being like, oh, this is the origins of like too high of views of predestination, it actually stops us from going too high. It keeps us level to be able to say, no, God's actually electing people graciously from their fall, and he's actually leaving people in the fall who have by virtue of their own wickedness are in the place that they're at already. So why are you reprobating all of these? Why are you reprobating all these innocent people? No, why are you reprobating all these innocent people? No, they were so innocent. No, they're Masa Damnata.
The best place to think about this actually isn't so much Romans 9, but Romans 5, because because really Masa Damnata is a term that describes the fallen covenantal body of Adam, like that body which proceeds from Adam is under merely the covenant of Adam, which has been broken because of the problems with the material passed on from that lineage. That's what it means.
So true. Oh yeah. You can use this video, that video, any video you want to post edits or whatever. I don't care. And then Erasmus' son or Borehorn daughter.
You shouldn't answer that. You shouldn't answer that.
I love Trent Horn. Trent Horn and I have no problems. Okay, Trent Horn will even. I've even got him to start using the language of I don't know. I'm taking credit for it, but I'm taking credit for it because
he pays attention to things people say about him. It's deleted now because he periodically deletes his messages, but some of my friends and I added him on Twitter and had a brief discussion with him about some problems with one of his books, and he actually conceded and took it in mind. So he's a receptive person. I don't think people should like go after him or say things about his wife. I mean, you shouldn't do that to anybody, really. I think we need to get rid of some of the irony bro, like very lowbrow kinds of public humor that we have.
But it's really funny though.
Okay, it is, but in public,
Michael Laufton. It's reason and
Okay.
knowledge alike.
Yeah.
Okay.
That stuff,
I wrote
that
the
stuff got
whole
old.
script.
That stuff got old 3 years ago. But it's still funny.
Yeah, but hey guys,
Because now,
guys,
now it's funny because it's so tired. Like it's funny that it's so tired and people keep doing it.
yeah,
It's-
okay. I don't. Hey, just as a reminder, and as a note, I'll turn this on to Never. As a note, I am not in charge of this server. Okay, I am
So
not in
true.
charge of this server. This server is in charge by a man named Victor, who's a German. It's
Any
not.
any
But
server,
I happen
any server that
to-
Christian founds ends up becoming a wasteland that he doesn't want to look at. By the way, so it's not his fault what happens. There.
Okay. And I already told them, okay, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So if you ever see anything
Yeah.
like bad in one of these supposed servers that are mine, I have already told them to stop. I have given up leadership to somebody else.
Group,
it's not
there's
me.
a certain group of people giving Christian a bad name, basically. Certain group of people, which we will not go into anymore.
Okay, but this is the link to the group. Okay. So I've reopened what's called Numenites. Numenites is a wasteland. It's pretty terrible, but I'm there and I VC in there sometimes if anybody wanted to VC with me. So I'll put the link in the description below as well. But I'm just reminding you guys of all of those facts, okay?
Oh,
no,
before I get
speaking
of which, if anybody here actually has a line to Mr. Lofton, we don't like have like a problem with him or something. We have some critiques of him, but many of the things where he thinks that Christian, and I spoke to him before. I don't know. He knows I'm not a crazy person or dislike him. Yeah, any issues between Christian and Michael Lofton, Christian's always been willing to talk them out, and a lot of them have been misunderstandings on Mr. Lofton's side. So if anybody has like a way to get into contact with him and let him know that would be great, because this is starting to become like a really unnecessary and painful rift. Okay, important question right at the end there, which we discussed a few days ago.
Isn't the pain of loss the same thing as the worm of conscience, and therefore it is not only the lack of grace but an active conscious remorse? No. So the pain of loss merely refers
another
to
connotation issue.
Okay, so basically you can use pain of loss in a narrow sense or pain of loss in a broad sense.
Mm-hmm.
In a narrow sense, it merely refers to, as the name entails, not having one supernatural end. In a broad sense, it also refers to all of the concomitant affections that follow from that fact. So the worm of conscience follows from the pain of loss when one realizes that they had certain supernatural motions that they impeded culpably by their own words. So those who are infants, they will have the pain of loss in the narrow sense, but in the broad sense, they will not have the worm of conscience. You need this initiative. I can't put that on the screen.
Okay, so there's one thing that I'd like to add to this, which I discussed with you a few days ago, actually.
Yeah.
So, not Wagner Christian, but Mia Christian, right? I'd like to say this term pain often confuses English speakers, okay? Because the word pain in English has the connotation of a sensation, at least of an affection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people think of the term pain, they're thinking of something that either goes owie, it stings, or they're thinking, oh, that was embarrassing, oh, that's horrifying, or that or like an offensive experience or something like that. So basically, in hell, all of the above is experienced. A lower sensory pain, like in a tactile sensation and bad smell, horrible vision, etc., but also these emotional experiences, right? So the emotional experiences by those who are in the hell of the damned, in Gehenna or Tartaros or whatever you want to call it, right? Whoever is there experiences the lower sensory pain and these higher passions, negative sensations and the higher passions of like sorrow and these kinds of things, right? But that sorrow is not the same thing as the pain of loss in the strict sense. In the strict sense, when we use the word pain in English, in this context, it's a translation of that term Christian's been using on his whiteboards, the Latin term pena, right? Paena, which actually is more like the word penalty, not pain in English, right? So penalty of damnation, penalty of loss, penalty of sense, different from pain in the usual sense that we think of things, right? So it would be wrong. It would be wrong to think that pain of loss means a negative emotional experience on account of knowing that you're damned. Pain of loss in the strict sense just means that penalty whereby you were originally called the beatific vision and now you don't have it and you're never going to have it. You see? That's what the penalty of loss means. And that's why that penalty of loss applies both to the damned and to those who are in the infants and like stupid, stupid in the technical sense, people who would who would be in the limbo of the infants.
Stupid in the technical sense.
Yeah, this is the term used in old translations. Yeah, I didn't want to say that on stream.
It says,
I nearly did.
Stupid. It says stupid in the technical sense. Am I stupid in the technical sense? Okay, he's not. Okay. Is the opinion of St. Augustine permissible? Okay. I'm assuming you're asking about where St. Augustine talks about how infants have the lightest of afflictions. So there's debate. There's genuine debate between the schools on how we interpret St. Augustine. Some following Gregory of Rimini, they're going to say that we ought to interpret St. Augustine's teaching that there is pain of sense. That is the fires burning, the pain of sense for infants who are unbaptized. And others, basically everyone, actually not just basically, but everyone else besides some of these Augustinians, these get followed as late as the 18th century by a man named Berti. So it is something that lasts as a minority position in the schools. And is it permissible to hold that position? Yes. One is at liberty to hold that position. I'll leave it at that, basically. But others are going to respond that they're misreading St. Augustine, and that actually when he's talking about the lightest of punishments, he's merely referring to the punishment that is the punishment of loss. I'm not exactly one way or the other when it comes on how we interpret St. Augustine. On this point, I don't think it really matters to me that much. Obviously, his authority is quite weighty, but if he erred on this point, he erred on this point. Really, all we need to have like a broadly Augustinian view, all we need to affirm is the pain of loss and reject a third place, and to affirm that limbo is a part of hell. That's really what we need to keep in when it comes to general principles. It doesn't go into detail too much about how we've used these punishments. Hello, Hasan. You've unmuted yourself.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Remember, I'm preparing for. Oh yeah, all you guys. None of you guys know. My little brother, my 19-year-old brother, is getting married next year, and we're meeting his future. We're going to be receiving his future in-laws at our house tomorrow, which we've been prepping for a few months. So if you can pray for my brother's marriage and for my brother in general, for my family in general, I'd really appreciate that. That's why I keep having to go away for a while.
Okay, let me see if there's anything.
There's a really good question here. The one that was actually asked to St. Augustine himself. Patrick Groiper at the end asks it.
Oh yeah, based Patrick Groiper.
Yeah, real. I love this question. So
how does the Catholic
really
definition affect the way we evangelize and the reasons behind evangelization? Wouldn't there be no point evangelizing people who are predestined not to be saved? Well, we already kind of mentioned this. So we have to recognize is that actually, and St. Augustine talks about this at the end of on the Predestination of the Saints, which is book 2 on perseverance. He talks about how actually predestination doesn't stop you from evangelizing. Predestination is actually the very sort of source of evangelization. How could that be? The reason is, if you remember the definition that we started here about 3 hours ago, was that predestination is the foreknowledge and preparation of future benefits. So what does that mean? That means that predestination is basically an act of both the will and the intellect of God. It's him causing certain means to bring about certain ends. So the very reason that you evangelize is because you are one of those means. You are an instrument of predestination to bring about the end of God, the end of what God says. And it's really up to you to preach the gospel, evangelize, work among all of these ordinary means, and let God worry about the rest. Because you're merely an extrinsic sort of means and cause. You don't evangelize somebody you kind of giving them like really, really great arguments. You really debunked them with that one. Rather, that can be certain means of disposing. It can be certain means of removing errors, but the conversion is God who wills and works and gives faith, which is itself a gift. So really, predestination makes you want to evangelize more, because you are. Imagine how cool that sounds. Imagine if we called ourselves instruments of predestination. That'd be such a cool title. Like, yes, I'm an instrument of predestination, bringing about the means in which God has from eternity ordained to his own glory. Like that sounds really cool. So it's actually a lot better. It's not a lot worse for evangelization.
I would want to add...
Discord link doesn't work. Yeah, we'll cry about it.
Can I add to the evangelization question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, you don't know who is predestined to heaven and who isn't. So on Earth, you have to have like a kind of like reasonable hope of everybody that you meet and human beings in the world in general. So since you have no idea like who is going to heaven, you have to play your part basically in helping those who are going to go to heaven go there, right? Because God makes use of secondary causes, including people like us and you, in people's salvation, right? But not only that, actually, for pastoral reasons, I will not tell the flip side of that.
I think
the whole scandal and cause of justice thing. I'll leave that out.
I'm an instrument of reprobation.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I was about to go right into that, and I'm like, maybe I'll leave that one out.
Let's leave that one out. Yeah. Okay. Let's.
Yeah.
Okay. Need intro to scholasticism to understand Vatican II better. So true. This is a favorite question ever given to me. Yeah.
That's
so a good. I mean, if you were, I've been actually liking. I don't know what Astro or anybody else thinks about this, but a lot of them are created equal. I've been. No, I need to go to Isidore. I've been kind of.
You kind of need to study Vatican II's Acta in order to understand
he's trolling about the Vatican II part. He just keeps asking about good introductions to scholasticism. That's all he wants.
Yeah, and I told him Carta's ABC to scholastic philosophy, but he keeps ignoring me.
ABCs of scholastic philosophy. I mean, yeah, that, or you could read one of the ones.
Bro, I was reading Russian and Greek works. It's over.
You didn't see that? Wagner PNCW. Yeah, I've been really liking.
Len is great introduction to philosophy.
Yeah, I've been really liking his introduction to philosophy, and what's great about this is it actually coheres with all of his other full manuals. So you basically have like a little summary in his introduction to philosophy, then you get like a full 400-page treatment in his full manuals. And then what do you think about his tour of the Summa? Yeah, Glenn's been one of my favorites. I
didn't know he wrote about Thomistic sociology. That's crazy. I need to.
Bro, I told you 5 times.
Yeah,
I forgot, bro. You've recommended so many good books. I can't remember all of them.
We,
Also,
Astro and I are the librarian. We're librarians.
yeah, there's one more good work. It's called Modern Thomistic Philosophy by Richard Percival Phillips.
Yeah, it's actually
I
really
need
good.
the sociology.
Although it leaves out
for
some
obvious
parts.
reasons.
It leaves out some parts. It's not completely. It's not complete.
Well, in 2 volumes, that's the best you're gonna get. Christian.
Well, Intro to Philosophy is everything in one volume, dude. Honestly, I'm gonna eventually record a course that's actually an introduction to scholastic philosophy, following Glenn's manuals. Yep. Okay. Do I hold that predestination to glory is before any consideration of merit? Yes. I, along with every single
Obviously,
doctor
what
of the
the heck,
church.
bro? Yeah, like you basically.
What do you
have
think
to
we've
hold
been
that.
talking about?
No, don't troll them. Don't troll them. Don't troll.
Oh, okay.
Dude, don't watch the double predestination
I've liked
video,
the meme.
please. He went through all the magisterial sources on this. Just like, why would you ask him to basically like do the whole video again in this stream? It's not very nice.
He probably didn't know, bro. Just chill.
Okay, I'm just.
Okay. Technically
defending my French
speaking, it is a licit. Yeah, I know. Hasan's like the 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 meme with like the meme with the lion, and it's like when somebody messes with Israel, and it's like the lion with the American flag on it. That's Hasan with me.
So true. So true. So true.
Okay.
Except when I'm going after you myself, then it's okay.
So true. Do you hold it? Yeah. Okay. So technically speaking, the Molinists, some Molinists, actually, I think it's all Molinists, hold that predestination to glory is after the consideration of merit.
Oh my goodness, this book is amazing. Thank you, Astro.
What a shame.
Well, I was the one that just showed it to you. What are you thanking Astro for? You didn't do anything.
Because he recommended it first and I forgot, so I wanted to make up for my idiocy in failing to look into it.
Oh, Nicholas, I forgot to tell you, Nicholas. So I realized this morning my daughter she woke up very early, like 5 a.m. And I was up with her this morning. She wouldn't stop crying. And I realized that she really liked edits, like Tradwave edits. So I just watched all of you. I just watched like all of your videos this morning, Nicholas. You haven't posted in a while. You need to post again.
Nicholas.
Yeah, my daughter Ava was just like sitting there like watching it like obsessively, all your edits. Yeah.
Bro, if you're in the UK, you have to go on to visit all the Oratorian chapels. So go to Birmingham, go to Cardiff, go visit all of them, right, if you can. And also visit the Dominican Rosary Shrine in London, and you have to visit Walsingham. There's like really good places to visit if you have time. Please don't fail to visit those places if you're going to be someone that visits the UK every now and then.
Hasan, is it our Nicholas or someone else?
No idea.
No, different one.
I don't think our Nicholas is in the UK. He would have told me.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. He went to the Oxford Oratory. So cool. Awesome. I've been to the Cardiff one and the Birmingham one. I need to visit the other ones. Haven't got the chance to yet.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Can you talk about the Greek fathers and predestination? I'm not too knowledgeable in this topic.
If I have resources on this, so maybe we can talk about it like another time after I refresh my stuff. But there's definitely like a lot written about this that can help you, because a lot of the weird perceptions of the Greek fathers as semi-Pelagians have been laid to rest a long time ago by our guys. So like a century ago by our guys.
Yeah, even actually Petavius had a very extensive and that was like 300, 400 years ago. Petavius had a very stringent treatment of predestination. Well, I mean, it wasn't for a good end, because he was arguing that Molinism was actually the teaching of the fathers and of St. Augustine himself. But what it does help us out is the denial that they were semi-Pelagians. So it's a W.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things you need to keep in mind is that people like St. Cashid and the Greek fathers talk in a way that you find even Augustine and Fulgentius talking in some of their documents, because they're simply focusing on the necessity of man's cooperation with sufficient graces, or they're emphasizing the importance of not resisting when the Holy Spirit gives you those offers of justifying grace, right? So basically, like, simply to emphasize the place of free will is what they're doing most of the time, and to try and read into that they're saying that election is, like, from our free will principally is very strange. It's more so that they're saying that no one who comes to the use of reason is elect except through God's making use of their free will. And St. Chrysostom is really clear in this on his commentary on that verse in Philippians. God is at work in you both to work and to will, right? And St. Augustine, St. Augustine actually has like an explanation, like a proof that St. Chrysostom didn't disagree with him on his predestination beliefs.
Yeah,
He
St.
specifically
Augustine
wrote
talks
about
the distinction between the order of intention and order of execution. Yeah, I really actually do want to dig into it, because that's for a lot of people, and to be honest, it wouldn't actually be like the most problematic thing in the world if they didn't have a developed sort of view of a predestination, because the magisterium has ruled on this throughout the local Western councils. So you, like, a lot of the like weird 21st century revisionists who just say like, oh, we can just disagree with all these local Western councils. They're wrong, because these are papally approved councils. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Saint John Cassian. I don't think that he was, or definitely not Saint John Cassian. But there was definitely not too much understanding in the semi-Pelagian controversy in the West. It's kind of very. I don't think Saint John Cassian was a semi-Pelagian at all. I love Saint Prosper.
Horrible belief.
Yeah, I love Saint Prosper, but I think he a lot of his attacks of those guys were very unfair. He wrote it when he was a young man, though. I wonder how old he was. I can't remember. I think
and also the Vincentian document is misattributed. It wasn't Bison's, Vincent and Lorenz. I posted earlier like the name of a paper that goes through some of the issues with that attribution.
Yeah, let me see. Okay, he was like 40 when he wrote it. Dang, relatively young.
Yeah, compared to his other works. Yeah.
For some reason I thought he was a lot older. I thought he was a lot younger than that. I thought he was like a decade younger. Yeah, because he wrote his final work, Call of All Nations, in 450. That's when he was 60 years old. It was written 435. So yeah, 40s. They wrote a book against Cassian. They wrote a based poem on divine providence. I wish that's been. I think parts of it have actually been translated. Parts of it have. But yeah, the introduction. Oh my gosh! If you ever read Saint Prosper of Aquitaine, the introduction to the books are the freaking worst. They suck. They say like he denied sufficient grace, and like we know better because sufficient grace now. He denied the universal call, like 1 Timothy 2, like the real reading. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the whole book is about sufficient grace. Like, how do you say that he rejected it? It's crazy.
Oh yeah, Nicholas.
Is everyone Arminian or something? Why only
real
46 likes?
More likes, please.
Yeah, more likes. More likes.
Yeah, Nicholas, the Dominican Rosary Shrine is absolutely beautiful, and on 6 p.m. every Sunday they have a Dominican Rite Mass, usually a very austere one, although occasionally they have polyphony. I love those guys, and the semi-famous Father Lawrence Liu is Father Superior, the associated Dominican community. So you definitely check that place out. If Christian comes to the UK, I'm taking him there.
I know I need to visit the UK.
Yeah, we got loads of things to show you, dude. And also, my friend Sam Totus Tours, he's agreed to take you on a tour of the Birmingham Oratory and show you all the Newman stuff.
Yo, we're so back. Do they have the cassock? The famous cassock.
Did they have loads of things? They have like his breviary or something. They have some of his vestments. Crazy.
Wow.
Also, it's literally where he lived and heard mass before he died. And I showed you that. Remember, I showed you that little window that he would peek out of to hear mass said in the chapel below.
I never heard about that.
I showed you a picture of it and told you. Well, you probably forgot. It's fine. You reacted to it. You thought it was cool. Yeah.
I reacted to it. Did I sword jack over it?
Okay? I think
really
you
cool.
said something. Usually, when you react to things like that, you say "Yo." Based capital letters, question mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. Yeah. I've never thought about you sword jacking while typing that out, but now I will be. You just ruined my experience.
That's a forgery. Yeah, these are forgeries. Astro backed me up on this. I never do that in DMs. It's forgery. Oh, yeah, I forgot. So this next week, we're doing all of our anti-hand-holding and anti-dance videos. We're going to make sure we post them. You know, I love being rigid Augustinians. Isn't it great?
Nicholas, I would need to get you in touch with him. If you have Discord and my app, then just talk to me and I'll introduce you to Sam.
Yeah, we need anti-dance week. We need anti-dance week.
He doesn't like run tours. He just knows a lot about it, and he showed me and a couple of other people around.
Like the stream. Yeah, so true. So true, Unionist Initiative. All trads. I saw somebody tweet something to this, like almost exactly that, or maybe like comment on one of my videos. All trads are Augustinian until they talk about predestination or dance. So true. Like, he said
all trads are Augustinian until you talk about
things. He said so many beautiful things. He talks about sacrifice the mass to own the
trads are Augustinian until you talk about all trads are Augustinian until you talk about what Christian marriage is supposed to look like. That's the big one.
Until you read him against Julian. What was one of the Pelagian errors on marriage, Hasan? What was one of the Pelagian errors? What was one of the condemned moral theses of the Pelagians? I wonder what it could be. Nobody knows. But that's just.
By the way, guys, I unironically don't really want to talk about the hand-holding stuff in public ever again. It's just I just have so many bad experiences with Westerners on this topic. Like every single time they spurg so hard and they become so uncharitable, they say the most horrific things. They intentionally take you out of context to make you more ridiculous so that they don't have to contend with the actual doctrine, I don't want to do it anymore.
I forgot to tell. What do you want, Astro? We're having a nice chat here. Yeah, shut up.
No. I'm not gonna shut up. No. Okay, hold on. This is so bad. It gets so bad regarding this hand-holding thing that some people are jerks about it, but they're not jerks when somebody starts insulting your religion. But when you start talking about hand-holding, they go, "Oh, dude, you cannot say that," as if like hand-holding is some sort of a god. So they defend that more than they defend their own religion. It's so bad.
So
I've also, one of the things that I've noticed, which is one of the most offensive things, is when people say it's against human nature and it's impossible. Like it's impossible to have a relationship moving towards marriage without doing things like that, right? When people say stuff like that, I usually respond with, okay, but I like come from a religious culture where all of the pious people like do that. And then the second that they realize I'm talking about like Muslims, like religious Shia Muslims, they just go, "Oh, that doesn't count." And I'm like, well, if you watched Christian's video about logic, you would know that the hidden minor premise here is Muslims don't have human nature, which is like ridiculous.
Or you could use like as an a fortiori argument, because ordinarily they don't have the spiritual teaching of the church or the sacraments. So they only have extraordinary. They have
and
grace.
that's one of the worst things is that okay, so these people who love their like frilly veils and their lace and all these funny little girly things that they enjoy, right? These people, these people, these enemies of evangelical and apostolic austerity, these enemies of I don't want to go that far, but these lovers of weird interpretations of Chateaubriand and Catholic intimacy, these kinds of people, right? These sickos, right? They have this they have this very strange thing where like if something feels good and it's not like part of like libtard progressive culture, then it must be like something approved of by God. It's so strange, right? And they have this really weird mentality that somehow the fact that religious Muslims are better at self-control than the average, like, person who's a member of a self-selected group of religious lay people in the Catholic Church today means that there's a sense in which having self-control is like a mark of not having grace. Whack. Like what's going on? Like they think that Christians are supposed to be less good at self-control than people who don't have true doctrine and the sacraments. What? Like what's even going on? I don't understand. It's so bizarre to me. Like I've come across so many people who are like, oh, Muslims, they fast all the time. They expect people to pray 5 times a day. They don't do this. They don't do that. They abstain from sex all these days of the year. They do this. They do all these things. And I'm like, well, you're making them out to sound like us. You don't understand. Islam is a very common religion. Like they say it's okay to get married. They say it's okay to get married to a woman because you want to have sex with her. Like you have no idea. Like the hilarious thing is that these people are the people with the Islamized understanding of sex and marriage, not us. Right? All the Muslims are doing is what St. Thomas says. They're doing the not all of them, because some of them intuitively know that that's not what they should be doing. But a lot of people are doing the fasting of gluttons and the continence of rakes, meaning the only reason that they're holding back from sexual sins now is because they want to sleep with lots of women when they go to heaven, or at least sleep with their wife when they go to heaven. Right? The only reason that they fast now is because they want to eat loads of really nice food without throwing up when they go to heaven. Like it's got nothing in common with our understanding of self-control at all. But some Muslims who are pious don't think of things in those terms, and they still have self-control. Okay? They still have self-control. But Catholics who have everything going for them, they have true doctrine, they have grace, they have beautiful mysteries to contemplate, they have methods of the spiritual life that are clearly delineated by our tradition. And how are we doing? Our culture is in shambles, right? Now, they are going downhill. Don't get me wrong. Muslims are going downhill slowly, right? But they're doing much better right now, right? Than even the religious sector of our community. And whenever you talk about this, people get this really weird tribalistic thing where you can't make this critique, or you can't say that there's a problem. You can't say that anybody's doing better than us in any way. The real situation is we are doing worse than them, and we should be ashamed of it. We should be absolutely ashamed of it. You say the West is in shambles, Christian, but it's more than the West, because Middle Eastern Christians are westernized and have all the same problems. Indian Christians are westernized and have all the same problems. It's not, even in Africa, there's a certain extent of these issues, right? It's not just a Western issue. We are going through a phase as a church where the laity have completely lost sight of the universal call to holiness. They think the universal call to holiness is a universal call to like live a completely natural life, but more gooder and with less arguments or something. It's so weird. I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, people are bringing up theology of the body in the chat. E-girls really think they cooking when they talk about sex because they read theology of the body And everybody's like, no, actually, theology of the body's Augustinian. W. Yeah, theology of the body.
Bros are like,
they just talk about like theology of the body.
So there's
That's
this
just like,
long text. Yeah, there's this long text I
900
haven't
page
read
text.
any of, but I'm gonna name drop it to argue for something really retarded. Yeah, okay.
It's so true. So true. Ugh. Oh man. Well, is Hasan shaved? Well, he's Middle Eastern, so it doesn't matter if he shaves.
No, I don't shave. I have some kind of health condition that stopped my beard from growing anymore. It's very sad. Otherwise, I'd have like a Giga Chad full beard.
That's such a W. Hasan by divine providence has been rendered to Latin.
Yeah, Clement of Alexandria is not very happy about it.
Yeah, well, Clement of Alexandria, I love him so much. Even Homer nods. Even Homer nods. Yeah. I wasn't gonna say anything negative about Clement of Alexandria. Oh yeah, but what I was gonna bring up earlier, before Astro so rudely interrupted me, is there was
Unionist initiative. What's wrong with you, bro? Delete this. Delete this.
Can we still
No, don't read it out. No,
no.
If you're not going to, Christians should delete it. Oh my god.
Okay, I deleted the comment. I deleted the comment.
It's so bad.
Okay,
don't say stuff like that, bro.
Okay. So what I was saying is there was this one guy in one of my double predestination videos who he quoted the text from Queersy that said the quote one single predestination. He's like, see, we believe in single predestination. And he didn't read the rest of the quote where it said the one single predestination of the elect to heaven and then the reprobate to punishment. So it's like, yes, I don't believe in double predestination. I believe in single predestination, but it's to hell.
I believe in single predestination to heaven and to hell. Real?
Yeah, I believe in single predestination to heaven and to hell. And well, the funny part about this is I looked at his comment history, and the last time he commented on my channel was to counter signal you on hand holding and to say that Hasan is heretical on hand holding because he contradicts Joan. Herbert, or is it Herbert or something like that? Joan, the Franciscan who was really weird on a lot of sexual questions. Like
the one guy you
so the two comments he leaves on my page is about hand holding and predestination. It's like, well, these guys, I just completely blocked them.
Yeah, that's a certified those group of people poster.
Yeah, so true. Okay. Anyways, I do need to go. I missed my class this morning. This stream is a gem.
Yeah, I have to go too.
Yeah, so many clips. I'll talk to Unionist Initiative and we'll get some good clips out of this one. Triple predestination.
There are a couple of other good questions here, but there's been so many like uncharacteristically from a Saturday show. There's been like loads of really good questions. So thank you guys.
Yeah, you guys, you did your work. You guys are the true Chads here. You're the true Giga
you
Chads
served
here.
the purpose.
You've served. You're agents of predestination right now, bringing about the fruitful
Cardinal
discussion.
Burke likes lace.
What? Yeah, Cardinal Burke, except that one. Lace. Yeah, that guy can die. That guy.
Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna ban that guy.
Yeah, Unionist Initiative. Listen, Cardinal Burke can come back when he's Cardinal Burka. Okay. Not
Cardinal Burka.
Oh. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, goodbye, guys. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Remember, become patrons, like, comment, do all that stuff. Okay. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, real. Anyways, bye, guys.